Hello, class. Boy howdy, no one requested this one, huh? For no particular reason, on November 6th of 2024, I was feeling pretty down about the state of the world. As usual, my best method for coping with this kind of doom and gloom is regression. I'm kind of like Benjamin Button, except it's only in terms of my mental state, so it's just sad. So I started a rewatch of the most scandalous show I ever did see at 12 years old, The Secret Life of the American Teenager.
You're only young once. You should be having a little fun.
The euphoria of my youth. If you're not familiar, this show begins when 15-year-old Amy Juergens discovers she's pregnant after she had sex for the first time at band camp over the summer, which checks out because band camp does seem like the horniest place one could spend their summer in high school. The father of the baby is bad boy drummer Ricky, and you can tell he's a drummer because he walks around with drumsticks in his back pocket for the first few episodes. But Amy falls in love with the nice guy, Benjamin Boykovich.
If you don't want every guy in the school to look at you, then why do you dress like that?
Because I want to.
That's kind of hard to argue with.
Throughout the first season, you see Amy tell her friends and family that she's pregnant. Watch her struggle to decide if she should have the baby, if she should put the baby up for adoption, or hey, maybe sell it to the highest bidder because you know how much a Caucasian baby goes for these days.
Now get lost!
You know how much money some families would pay for a healthy Caucasian baby?
And this is all happening while her parents' marriage is falling apart and obligatory teen romance drama carries on. However, as the show went on, it became much less focused on Amy as a teen mother and more so about the sex lives of all of these teenagers.
What are my chances of getting laid with someone who's not going to wait until they get married?
25% of guys your age are having sex. 29% of sexually active 15 to 17-year-old girls have partners 3 to 5 years older.
Which explains why the original title for this series was The Sex Life of the American Teenager. Even though sex is talked about to an obnoxious degree in every episode, the showrunner Brenda Hampton wanted this show originally to be family programming, and its intended audience was for teens to watch the show with their parents. Quite frankly, if I had to watch the show with my parents, I don't think I would be here making this video.
You want to dance?
Dance, dance, or is that like a code for oral sex?
Dance, dance.
When I watched the show for the first time when I was like 12, I pretty quickly lost interest after season 2, I think. By that point, I had Glee and Pretty Little Liars, which were just objectively better shows to watch. But this time, I committed to watching it all the way through. I watched all 5 seasons, all 121 episodes. Friends and family, if you're wondering why I didn't text you back, this is why. Was it worth it? Probably not. But now I have to talk about it. I should say this is not going to be an episode by episode recap the way my Bachelor videos are. God bless the people who have done that with this show, but quite honestly, this show is so repetitive yet also inconsistent, there is really no point in a detailed play-by-play. In fact, one thing I noticed almost immediately was just how often characters will say the exact same thing twice in a row.
I'm having a baby.
What?
I'm having a baby.
What?
I'm having a baby.
She's Amy's little sister.
So?
So she's Amy's little sister.
It's like they had to get these shows to 44 minutes by any means possible. So instead of frying all of our brains, I wanted to give a broader overview that both people who watch the show and people who haven't watched the show can enjoy. Because even though the show definitely tested my spirit at times, it was so much fun rewatching the show.
Everything will be fine. It has to be Mr. Ruben.
Enriquez.
And Enriquez to you.
Nowadays, we are just overwhelmed with content in every format, and every new streaming service we're now forced to pay $15.99 a month for. While I'm sure that has done plenty of damage to our collective attention span, it also means that it takes a lot more for a show to maintain a loyal audience for multiple years. We expect good camera work, witty dialogue, a tight storyline, reasonably good acting. And if a show doesn't have those things, odds are it's gonna get axed after its first 13-episode season. Even amazing shows with a loyal following aren't safe these days. But back in 2008, I think especially in the teen demographic, who cared about any of that? You could just talk in circles in the same hallway or same house set for 24 episodes a season and have a hit TV show. This show had the highest ABC show premiere to that point with 2.82 million viewers. The season 1 finale had 4.5 million viewers. Secret Life beat that night's episode of Gossip Girl, which got less than half of its usual viewership because people were too busy watching this incredible dialogue.
I mean, how do we even know I have a birth canal?
Turns out as long as the show has enough vaguely taboo subject matter to reel teen viewers in, they could coast off clean and clear morning burst money for 5 seasons.
Slightly unorthodox for me to be going out with a guy who's having a baby with my best friend, but if that's what I want to do, then that's what I want to do.
Okay, well, here. Got this for you at the market. It's new product for your skin. You wash your face with it in the morning, and not only does it get your skin clean, it gives you a burst of energy.
I mean, what an ad transition. It's so jarring and completely out of nowhere. Thank you to today's sponsor, Rocket Money. One thing you'll learn quickly if you spend any amount of time with me is that I am an incredibly forgetful person, but also an incredibly impulsive person. So you know a free trial loves to see me coming. Signing myself up for a bunch of subscriptions and then immediately forgetting if they even exist, which ones I have, should be an Olympic sport. For me personally. I can't even begin to name all of the subscriptions I have going at the moment, let alone see them all in one place and discern which ones I actually want to keep going at this point. And that is where Rocket Money comes in handy. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. Like I said, I love using Rocket Money to cancel unwanted subscriptions. Once you connect your bank account, Rocket Money will compile all the subscriptions you have in a single list. And from there, Rocket Money can help you cancel these subscriptions in a few taps. Take control of your finances today. Go to rocketmoney.com/Ashley Norton and get started for free today. Thank you again to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Okay, so this is an ensemble show with a lot of characters. And one thing about the show is you will eventually grow to hate every single one of them at some point in time. I am not going to introduce every recurrent character here because that would be incredibly overwhelming for both you and I, but you should know for every one of these core characters I'm introducing here, just know that they have a very hot mom and just a terrible, terrible father. George Jurgens? More like George Jorkin, am I right? The main character of the show is Amy, the 15-year-old pregnant girl with a secret life. Amy gets a lot of flack, both from the characters on the show and the fan base, but honestly, I'm going to come right out the gate and say, I am an Amy apologist, okay? A lot of people say that Amy can be very immature, very selfish, especially in the first 2 seasons.
I just assumed that you'd keep the baby while I went to school.
Amy, I have to get a job.
Then where's the baby gonna be, Mom?
And it's also up to you to pay for any childcare that comes with the baby, don't you think?
No, not really.
There are also times where she's just straight up mean. She gets angry when Ricky lets his girlfriend hold his own child in season 2, and then calls her a slut multiple times when all Adrian wanted to do was have a positive relationship with her boyfriend's kid.
I don't want that
Slut?
Yeah, that's the one. I don't want that
Slut.
touching my baby. I don't just think you're a slut, Adrian. You are a slut. Slut.
And when Ricky later tries to establish formal custody rights so he can see his son on a regular basis, she coaches his own friends into giving testimony against him in court. There's also this one scene in season 2 where Amy and Molly Ringwald, aka Anne, run away with Amy's son John to visit Amy's grandma who's dying of dementia. Yes, Amy named her baby John. We have to go past that. Her mom, Anne, is talking about how sad she is that her mother has dementia and is losing who she is more and more every day. And Amy says, I'm forgetting who I was too.
They have an overnight nurse staying with her for a reason. She's beginning to forget who she is, Amy.
Well, I'm beginning to forget who I am.
Apologize to Molly Ringwald this instance. To be fair, I think Amy's immaturity and selfishness, especially in the first 2 seasons when she's pregnant and raising a newborn, is a very intentional choice by the show. If Amy had been very mature at 15, immediately stepped up to be a mother of her kid with no issue, I think the showrunners were worried that Amy's character would then send the message that all 15-year-olds are mature enough to have kids, and it's fine if they do. This show, for better or worse, was made during the peak of the teen pregnancy moral panic, and if the PSAs at the end of the show weren't clear enough...
The first time too many teens have the sex talk with their parents is when they're telling them that they're pregnant.
Parents, if your teen has a question about sex, don't assume they're doing it.
You're in charge of your own life, so stay young, stay focused on your future, and don't let anyone pressure you.
Teen pregnancy is 100% preventable.
For more information, visit stayteen.org.
The show was at least in part made as an attempt to lower teen pregnancies in the US, which were already getting lower and lower than any previous point in history, but who cares? Amy's impulsiveness in the show, her irrationality, combined with Shailene Woodley being the same age as her character, really does show that this is a kid who is raising another kid. I personally don't hold it against Amy that she was in denial about what was happening for so much of season 1.
Did you tell your parents about,
No. Adults get overwhelmed with unexpected pregnancy. Amy is just starting high school. Adults also struggle with co-parenting. I'm not shocked that a 15-year-old girl would also struggle with that. It's flawed, sure, but that all feels like human behavior to me. And even though Amy isn't always the most mature character, she clearly loved her son and gave up a big part of her own childhood to raise him.
And anytime that Daddy has you on a birthday or a holiday, we'll have our party the night before. Okay, we're gonna blow it out. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Whoa, yay!
And I think in seasons 3 and 4, you really do see her growth when it comes to her co-parenting. You at least get the sense that she's trying to do her best to be a good parent in spite of her circumstances. Honestly, my heart kind of breaks for Amy watching the show as an adult. After everyone begs her to raise this child on her own, not to consider adoption, not to consider other options. Literally no one steps up to help her like they said that they would. Her parents are too distracted by their own messy divorce and the newborn they also have. Yes, Molly Ringwald also gets teen pregnant in season 2, don't worry about it. Her dad is off having extramarital affairs and being a parent to Grace and Adrian way more than he ever is to his own children. When Amy is offered a spot at a school specifically for teenage mothers that would have a reduced schedule, accommodate the fact that she needs childcare, surround her with other young girls who are going through the same thing, everyone tells her that that's slut school.
I told you, it's alternative extension school for independent women.
So alternative. It's slut school. Say it.
And that going there would be her taking the easy way out.
You really want to go to school with a bunch of sluts?
Dad, if you're calling them sluts, you're calling me a slut.
No, I'm not. Where'd you get that?
I get that it would be hard for the writers to have Amy go to a completely different school. No one wants to build a second set on the show, but they chose to introduce this as a viable option, only to immediately shame Amy for even considering it, and I'm not gonna let that go. So instead, she goes to school full-time, she works at a nursery after school, she takes care of John basically every day for the first year of his life. Later on, Ricky gets to have John on the weekends. I would argue that Amy's still getting the raw end of that deal, because that means that Ricky gets to do the fun weekend stuff with their kid uninterrupted, whereas Amy only gets to spend time with her kid at the end of an exhausting 10-hour day. And on top of all that, she is dealing with all of the other characters who, I swear, are set out to ruin her life. In particular, my worst enemy, Benjamin Boykovich.
I've been rejected by the French horn player, a certain Amy something or other. Therefore, I've decided that I'm in love with her and cannot live without her.
And is meant to be the nice guy to Ricky's bad boy persona.
You still have a thing for Ricky Ticky Rumpa-Pum-Pum?
No, I don't. And I never did.
And if him casually wearing blazers to high school doesn't make you immediately want to run for the hills, I don't know what will. Ben is the son of that one guy from Sopranos. I don't know, I've never seen it, but people point that out every time I talk about this show. In this universe, the guy from The Sopranos is a multi-millionaire sausage entrepreneur, or as he's more commonly referred to, the Sausage King. And everyone recognizes him as the Sausage King.
I already told the Sausage King it was okay. Hey, that's a nice car. I just saw a lot of sausage for that puppy, huh?
Can we send some sausage over your way? What's with all the negativity, Sausage King?
I don't know. I'm not just a sausage king, I'm a realist.
So this sausage prince, Ben, lives a life of luxury. He has a butler, a driver, a private jet, and a sausage empire for him to take over someday. When the show starts, Ben really wants to hook up with this other character, Grace Bowman, because she's a Christian girl who is waiting until marriage.
Okay, why are you so obsessed with Grace Bowman?
Because she's Grace Bowman. She's a goddess.
She's not a goddess, she's a Christian. You are not a Christian.
I would become a Christian if I could have Grace Bowman.
His friend Alice says, you know what? Before you sleep with Grace, you should start with something easier. Like that little dweeb with the French horn, Amy.
Gotta start somewhere. Where do you think I should start?
Maybe there. Amy. She plays French horn. She's in the band. She's smart. She's nice. She might be desperate enough to go out with you.
And Ben is like, you are so right, Alice, my friend who will never get any real character development of her own. I'm going to switch my classes to be in the same room as Amy and ask her on a date so that I can sleep with her before I sleep with Grace. But because Ben is such a nice boy, he immediately falls in love with Amy. And by falls in love, I mean he tells her that he loves her after one date.
You're Amy Juergens, the girl that I love.
We had one date.
One date and 1,000 phone calls.
I'm telling you, this guy walked so that Luke P could run. By the way, he also falls in love with Amy's dad because they both hate Al Gore.
Vegetarians.
Hate him. Earth Day?
Please, here's one. Al Gore.
Oh.
Come to Papa.
Then he starts calling her My Little Amy.
Tricky Ricky? He's no competition.
They slept together.
What? But no. My little Amy would never...
When people tell him that they think Amy might be pregnant, he's like, no, that can't be true. My little Amy could never do such a thing.
Is she pregnant?
No. She can't be pregnant. I just kissed her. People are talking about my woman. They're saying she was cavorting with the drummer at band camp one summer's eve.
Once Ben finds out that it is indeed true, he proposes to Amy, which makes her immediately burst into tears.
I'm such a whore.
Well, you're my whore.
I also love this scene where Ben proposes to Amy because Ben is carrying around this picnic basket, right? He opens the picnic basket and just takes out the biggest plate of wings I've ever seen, and it's completely uncovered. So presumably there are just buffalo wings just strewn about the bottom of this picnic basket. This picnic basket is never going to be clean again.
Oh, wow.
Even though he knows that this child is not his, he insists that they can pretend it's his, which gives him the right to be there when Ricky and Amy are trying to discuss their options, even though he wasn't invited and was specifically told not to come to these meetings between Amy and Ricky.
Don't you think I should be included? That I should have some say in this?
You're not really married.
I'm more of a father to that baby than he is.
Eventually, Ben dumps Amy in season 2 because, Amy is too busy 6 weeks after giving birth to hook up with him.
And she looks like a hooker.
Yeah, well, I might be getting a hooker soon if we don't have some sort of contact in the near future.
But just because he's broken up with Amy, no, that doesn't mean he can move on. He would never allow such a thing. Ben, through a tedious miscommunication that we don't have time to get into, thinks that Amy and Ricky have hooked up. Amy is single, so really none of his business, even if it was true. But Ben is so angry about this, so angry in fact, that he sleeps with Amy's worst enemy, Adrian, who is also Ricky's girlfriend. And when Amy and Ricky both get pissed at them, Ben tells Ricky that the only way we can be even for you getting my ex-girlfriend Amy pregnant before she even knew me is if Adrian is pregnant with my baby.
You've wrecked my whole life. You know that? You got the one girl I really love pregnant.
Let's just call it even, all right?
Even? Unless Adrian has my baby, we're not even.
You know how teenagers think. Wouldn't you know it, Adrian is pregnant.
I'm having a baby. Oh, and it's Ben's.
There's something in the water. These people are incredibly fertile. Even though Amy actually forgave Ben for sleeping with Adrian and got back together with him, Ben keeps Adrian's pregnancy a secret from Amy because he knows that she won't make out with him anymore once she finds out.
Benjamin! What the hell was that?
What? I was just saying goodbye. And it might be my last chance to make out with Amy, so I want to make the most of it.
Amy finds out, they break up, and eventually he does marry Adrian, only to divorce her after she's traumatized from the loss of her baby. Then in season 5, he just blows up a school.
Oh, no. We know we burned down that school. Okay, how many other people were in there making s'mores?
In short, Ben is a little freak boy, and I don't think I've ever seen a character with less redeeming qualities. Ricky.
You don't think I could ever forget the night we spent together at band camp, do you?
Ricky, as I've said, is the bad boy of the show. When the show first starts, he is sleeping around, paying other people to do his homework, and doesn't want to take responsibility for his child at all.
It is your baby.
No. It's Amy's baby. I'm the father, but she's having the baby, so the burden of responsibility is on her.
But we also learn in his therapy sessions with Ernie Hudson that the reason Ricky is doing all this is because he grew up with 2 alcoholic parents who didn't take care of him. And worse than that, his father was a predator who abused his mom, him physically, and in other ways. So a forewarning if you watch this show, this is described in detail in the first episode with very little warning and a few other episodes in season 1, but past season 1 it's only like vaguely referenced. Throughout the show, I would say Ricky is the only character who has any sort of discernible arc and growth as a character. He starts the show as a deeply traumatized and troubled kid who, once his son is born, really fights to be an active and equal parent to Amy. He also later develops a really sweet relationship with his birth mother in spite of everything they both went through. Although he initially is this serial cheater who refuses to commit, he eventually decides to settle down and be a serious partner to Amy, and he's open to marriage, he's open to commitment. So needless to say, Ricky is a fan favorite. Although I will say, some of the Ricky lovers give him, I think, a little too much credit in his relationship with Amy.
Do not do that. Do not physically get in my way when I'm angry. That is not a good thing to do.
Amy and Ricky first start dating for real in season 3. Amy says that she doesn't want to be intimate with him again because he's had problems in the past with monogamy, and she wants to know that she can trust him. Ricky is very agitated by this and begins constantly pestering Amy about when they're going to hook up.
Talking about it, Amy. I think we've waited long enough. This weekend, is it all right?
Ricky, we've been over this before. I'm not going to be pressured into sleeping with you.
He does sort of apologize for this, but if I had a friend who dated someone like that, I would be concerned, let's just say. Even when Ricky is supposed to be fully a good guy in season 4, he still can be just really mean to Amy. There's this one episode where Ricky and his mom are babysitting Amy's younger brother, Robert. Yes, all the babies on the show have boomer names, we just have to accept it. Amy is like, great, I have plans for this one night in my life to go to a concert with my friend. We've already discussed this. Ricky, you are a responsible parent, so I trust you to handle this one day watching John and Robert on your own. I'm off. And Ricky just goes, can't you go to this concert that only happens tonight some other night?
Just call Lauren and tell her you meet her some other night.
And when Amy says no, he's like, sounds like you're on your period. You seem hormonal.
Wow. Miss Cranky Pants. You getting your period or something?
Which is an incredibly shitty thing to say. But it turns out that his totally off-base comment about her hormones had merit, because she's also secretly stressed about her period being late. So when Amy later tells Ricky about this, she's like, yeah, you were honestly kind of right about those misogynistic comments you made earlier. Nothing gets past you, Ricky. Or there's this one episode where Amy is going to summer school. Ricky has the day off and he's like, okay, I'm gonna take John to the beach. Amy is like, oh, well, we don't have any groceries. And I kind of thought you would do our laundry because we have no clean clothes. And also, like, I would also want to go to the beach with my kid who probably hasn't gone to the beach before. And Ricky says, well, too bad. You may be going to school all day, but I'm not going to do any of the things we need to do for our household. You chose to do summer school so you could graduate early and provide more for our family. So live with the choices you made.
Yeah, well, every day you want to do something other than go to school and to work, but that's your summer, school and work. Those are the choices you made, so live with it.
There are also moments in season 5 where Amy is just straight up terrified to tell Ricky things because she's worried that he's going to yell at her. There are multiple scenes where Amy will just be asleep and Ricky is standing over the bed with this dead look in his eye, waiting to yell at her about something.
What time is it?
6:30.
Ugh, we have to get up.
Yeah, we do. What's John doing in here? Where'd you lose my mother's wedding band?
What?
I noticed you're not wearing your wedding band or your engagement ring. We had a party. Didn't want anyone to know you're married.
And I know all of you who have watched the show are yelling, but the finale, the ending. We'll get there. I'm just saying everyone acts like Amy was the only one who sucked in their relationship. These two hated each other.
Where have you been?
Where have I been? Where have you been all day? You haven't answered any of my phone calls or messages.
I left my phone at home, okay?
Never occurred to me.
You can tell the show was written by people in their 60s and 70s because it's really giving like old sitcom, gee, I hate my wife. Anyways, let me burn down the garage for some comic relief. The old ball and chain is going to be real upset about this one. Adrian. Adrian was my favorite character out of the main group by far. Part of it was because Francia Raisa was just acting circles around everyone else. She gave camp when she had to work with stupid writing.
This is his shirt. This is where he left it.
But also in emotional moments, she really brought it. I don't just mean that she could scream and cry a lot. She also gave more subtle, grounded performances too. Adrienne is the quote-unquote slut of the group.
Advertising?
What? Oh, Lord.
But don't be fooled. She may look like a dumb broad, but she's actually really smart and wants to be a lawyer someday. Wouldn't expect those two character traits to coexist now, would we?
And your report card last year looks good, too. All A's and only 1 B last year?
Yeah, well, don't go spreading that around. It might ruin my reputation.
Adrienne was raised by her single mother and seemed to spend a lot of her time alone because her mother is a flight attendant and travels a lot for work. Eventually, Adrienne tracks down her birth father and finds out he's a local DA who is now married with 2 stepchildren. Her dad, Ruben, sees Adrienne and is like, "I told your mother you weren't supposed to meet me. Please never come here or speak to me again."
My agreement with your mother is that this would never happen. Please don't come around here again.
Only for him in the very next episode to go, "Just kidding. Even though I was not involved in your life prior, I am now going to be an incredibly overbearing and judgmental parent to you." That's what you wanted, right? This, by the way, is a classic way to write episodes of Secret Life. Have a character say one thing, and then the very next episode, have them say the complete opposite thing with no explanation of what changed in between. God bless, there is no such thing as setup and payoff on this show. Just setup and worse setup. Adrienne understandably has a lot of abandonment issues, both from her mom being gone so often and her dad not really being around for most of her life. Because of this, she's really bad with having healthy relationships and at times can be pretty mean or toxic to the people around her. That is until she meets the love of her life, her brother.
I have a new guy in my life. A guy that could maybe make a good and faithful husband for me.
Really? Who?
My brother.
Calm down. He is not her biological brother. He is Ruben's stepson, and neither of them knew the other existed until this moment when they're both 16. So, it's fine and not weird at all.
Okay, Dad, I'm okay. I'm sorry you came over, but you can go home now.
Oddly enough, her stepbro is the first significant other she has who really shows kindness to her. He listens to what she has to say. He actually cares for her. The only issue being he is, her brother. But it turns out her brother was cast on another ABC show, Make It or Break It. So this character was sent off to military school and was never mentioned again. Not only that, but Adrienne also fully reverts to not being capable of healthy relationships and continues her on-again, off-again obsession with Ricky for the next 4 seasons of the show. We will get into this later, but I think the writers in particular really did Adrienne dirty with a lot of her plot lines. But that being said, I just really enjoyed when she was on screen. She's funny. Her friendship with Grace was one of my favorite parts of the show.
I didn't have any friends. I don't have any friends. Except for Cookie.
Even though they're polar opposites, they really do show up for each other. And I think they both grow to be better people because of their friendship. They also just very much give the vibe of that one platonic friendship you have as a closeted queer person in high school that ends in the most devastating breakup for a reason you can't quite explain.
I just know what I am. And I know I'm not interested in women.
Adrienne is definitely a villain of the show, but I feel like Francia's performance leans into the absurdity of the plot lines she's given. So honestly, even when she's in the wrong, I think she's fun. Ashley. Ashley is Amy's rebellious younger sister. Initially, her character is 2 years younger than Amy, but then the writers wanted to sexualize Ashley just as much as they do the other characters, so she skipped being 14 and went straight to 15 in season 2. Ashley is a very sarcastic, grumpy, and very monotone person, even in the moments where the script clearly needs more intonation to make sense.
Hello? Remember me, witness at your wedding? You married my sister?
That isn't even a criticism of India. She was a child when she was acting in this. There are a lot of weird performances from people I've seen in other shows and are talented, there are also plenty of other monotone characters on the show.
I was mostly just staring at her. And smelling her. You sound a little crazy. Come on, you disease-carrying skank. You know I love you.
If all of the actors are giving weird, stilted performances, that's less of an actor problem and more of a director problem. Ashley in season 1 was one of my favorite characters. She's actually the first one to guess that Amy is pregnant, and Amy ends up really relying on Ashley's support because Amy doesn't feel like she can tell her parents the full extent of her feelings. Actually, I read the spin-off book, The Secret Diary of Ashley Juergens. In that book, Ashley says that she figured out Amy was pregnant because she broke into Amy's room and noticed that Amy hadn't marked her period cycle on her calendar like she usually does. So presumably, this is a thing Ashley just monitors for fun, but Ashley agrees to keep Amy's secret, and she even begins acting out to sort of distract her parents from what's going on with Amy. She's also the only one who realizes that her dad is having an affair and is like desperately trying to keep her family together while also supporting her sister.
How could you leave her? How could you leave us, especially now?
Especially now?
To me, this felt like a character that was complicated and could actually exist in the real world. But then, from season 2 on, she becomes just cartoonishly evil for no apparent reason. Despite demanding that Amy keep her child, Ashley constantly shames Amy for having a kid.
And I'm sick of my whole life being ruined because people keep having babies.
I can hardly wait until I've had a baby so we can speak the same language again.
And you didn't really care if you completely destroyed this family just to have a little fun at band camp.
In season 2, we get multiple conversations between Ashley and Ricky. Even though these conversations seem incredibly dry and platonic to me, the framing and the characters around them reacting immediately indicates that this is supposed to be some sort of secret love affair.
What's up with you two?
Not much.
No. No, no, no.
Then in season 3, Ashley and Ricky start flirting. In Ashley's defense, it was not just her, Ricky is doing it too. But then Ashley kisses Ricky. Ricky immediately is like, this is wrong, you're basically my sister-in-law, we can't do this to Amy. And Ashley is like, why not?
On my side.
Because she's the mother of my son.
So what?
Later, Ashley walks up to Ricky, who is, taking care of his son, and Ashley's like, come on, wouldn't you rather make out with me than watch your own child? Ricky is like, no, actually, John is the most important person in my life, and as the mother of my child, Amy is also important to me, so I'm not going to do anything to hurt my relationship with her. Ashley runs out and calls Amy to say, hey, sorry Ben got your worst enemy pregnant. Oh, you didn't know about that? And sorry I kissed Ricky.
Hey, Amy. I'm sorry about Ben and Adrian, and I'm sorry about Ricky and me. I wish I'd never kissed him.
Honestly, Amy is way too nonchalant about this whole thing.
I always knew that you two would get around to kissing each other one day. Just didn't know it'd be this soon, I guess.
Ashley is like, wow, why are you suddenly being so mature instead of the selfish, hateful witch that you normally are?
Wait, when did you start talking like a real person, telling the truth?
Does actually apologize beyond that one spiteful apology that does not count that she left on the voicemail? No, literally never. Instead, she breaks into Ricky's apartment and demands that he sleep with her.
Found me.
He does not. And so she gets mad about that for the next 2 seasons. Even after Ashley fully gets a boyfriend of her own, she still gets upset when Ricky and Amy get engaged.
I wish you had been here for the graduation. Actually, Ricky proposed to me. He called me up onto stage and he proposed to me in front of everyone.
Really? How embarrassing.
Listen, I get that the Ashley, Amy, Ricky love triangle is an easy way to make some YA show drama. But Ashley never feels even a little bit of shame or guilt about going after the father of her sister's baby. And I don't know, maybe this is me being naive, but that just goes beyond my suspension of disbelief. Amy and Ashley had a real bond in season 1, and that bond is never repaired even though Amy tries multiple times to be the bigger person and forgive Ashley.
I never had a sister. Yeah, me neither. Ashley? Jeez, whoa. What am I thinking? I totally forgot.
As a fellow Ashley, I'm disappointed, sickened even. This is also another reason why I'm an Amy apologist. Just imagine your biggest op being your own sister. Then there's Grace. Grace was raised in a conservative Christian home. Fun fact, Grace was actually inspired by Brenda Hampton's real-life niece. And Brenda once said in an interview that, unlike Grace, my niece actually kept her vow to stay abstinent until marriage. Okay, weirdo, who asked? At the beginning of the show, she's wearing a purity ring. Grace's boyfriend Jack tries to pressure her to take it off.
Since I put this ring on my finger and promised I wouldn't have sex until I get married.
Well, it did kind of upset me. I mean, I wasn't even part of the decision, Grace.
When that doesn't work, he cheats on her with the temptress Adrian. Very subtle imagery being employed here. First season Grace is a very naive character. She forgives Jack far too easily for his oral escapades with Adrian. Then when her parents don't allow her to get back with Jack, she starts pretending to date Ricky while still dating Jack. And this is framed as the first real time she's rebelled against her parents. This also leads to the most insane scene where Jack has dropped off Grace on a dangerous street corner. By that I mean she appears to just be standing outside of a suburban bank. Ricky is late to pick Grace up and bring her back to her parents. So, of course, two creepy guys drive up to Grace and start harassing her. Grace then gets down on her knees in prayer, slams one of their beer bottles into a makeshift shiv, only for Ricky to come running to the rescue in his 2009 Prius, just totally shirtless. Personally, I thought Grace was a national hero for this scene, but for some reason, the security footage of this incident becomes local news and everyone is making fun of Grace for defending herself against two perverts.
This is my favorite part.
Oh, come on. The best part's the prayer. Little Miss Goody Two-Shoes threatening to cut a guy with a beer bottle. And she's out with like some shirtless moron at midnight in some skeevy part of town. I love it. Don't you love it?
Even her parents are like, well, Grace, good luck showing your face at church tomorrow. Not very Christian of you to defend yourself and then hug a shirtless Ricky. I really liked early season Grace. Even though she and I would have very different stances on a lot of things in real life, her character felt naive and sincere in a way that felt real to me. That kind of resonated as someone who also grew up very Christian and then had a lot of those beliefs challenged in high school. She carries a lot of guilt for really small things like wanting to date a guy her parents don't approve of, or hanging out with people who aren't as conservative and Christian as her. But she's also really forgiving of people like Jack, who are just objectively treating her like garbage.
I made a mistake. And if God can forgive me, why can't you? So let me tell you something else. I only went out with you because my stepdad asked me to.
If this show had come out today, I think her character would have been a really interesting study on deconstruction. But because this show came out in 2008, and because the show is not that great, the writers just forget about the complexity of her character in later seasons, and she just fully becomes a menace like everyone else on the show. But Megan Park, the actress who plays Grace, even then, this role was way below her pay grade. Maybe that's why I liked Grace and Adrian's friendship so much, honestly. Francia and Megan were just the only two actors on this show who you knew consistently could bring it.
I hooked up with Jack.
You did? I forgot.
And finally, there's Jack. Jack is the one character I feel like the writers never really knew what to do with.
You want to dance?
Dance, or is that like a code for oral sex?
Dance.
He starts the show with this very Dean from Gilmore Girls haircut, and just like Dean, he's got a nasty little attitude to go with it. His favorite pastimes include pressuring Grace to back down on her own boundaries, being mean to Grace when he doesn't get his way for even half a second, and taking his shirt off in the hallway.
Is everyone just walking around with their shirts off? Because I can walk around with my shirt off too. And I'd probably look a lot better than he did, huh? You see this?
But then in the later seasons, he honestly just spends most of his time vibing, completely separate from the rest of the characters in the show. There's this one episode where him and Grace's brother Tom accidentally eat weed brownies they found in the freezer.
I bet that homeless guy left them here. Remember that homeless guy the dad used to let stay here? The one who was an alcoholic and he wouldn't go to AA or anywhere else for help?
I later learned from the cast reunion that this episode was actually inspired by a time when someone accidentally ate pot brownies on the set of Secret Life?
There was an episode written after an incident that happened about brownies. And that was because a few of the boys on the set decided to get high while we were filming. That happened.
Oh, I wonder who that was.
And then wasn't an ambulance called? This cast member, I'm not going to say who, looked at me and was like, what did he say? He was like, Mike, what's going on with you, Mike? And it's Francia. Mike, what's going on? And he was just like acting really crazy. And then someone else, one of the other boys was like,
he probably
fine.
thought they were regular brownies. In his defense, he would never have done that at work. That would be.
He did think it was regular brownies.
Other than that, though, Jack basically alternates the entire show between dating Grace, dating Amy's friend Madison. But honestly, Jack had way more chemistry with Grace's mom.
I have to find a date to this dance. I don't know if you...
Oh, no. Jack, I'm sorry.
I'm not kidding. I really thought they were setting up an Arya-Ezra age gap is okay storyline there. But no, that chemistry was just all natural, I think. So those are the main cast of characters I'll talk about over and over again. There's also Ben's best friends, Henry and Alice, Amy's best friends, Madison and Lauren, all of the hot moms and dads who are also there. Well, Ruben's hot, but he also sucks. And the 3 different guidance counselors they had who shared far too much personal information with the students. But I know what you've all been thinking. What kind of drinking game can I play while I watch all 121 episodes of this Teen Choice Award-winning show? I am so glad you asked. The easy thing, the obvious thing, would be to drink every time someone says the word sex, but for the safety of my viewers, I cannot recommend that. I am not being hyperbolic when I tell you that this show says that word an average of 30 times an episode. The highest I've seen is 58 in an episode. And if you all participate in that drinking game, no one will be left to watch my content. Instead, I think you need to get much more specific. For instance, you could drink every time someone says condom.
Do I look okay?
Take a condom. That pouch. They're in there.
Oh, that's cute.
Every time someone says oral.
Are we talking about oral sex or sex?
Settled once again for oral sex and other things when what you really want is a real relationship.
You want to dance?
Dance, or is that like a code for oral sex?
Dance, dance.
And also, drink every time a woman on the show is described as fickle.
They're dramatic, they're fickle.
It seems to me you're more than a little fickle, so excuse me if I don't just jump back into bed with you.
She and Mom are pretty fickle. Fickle and crazy.
You're a very fickle girl.
You're too fickle, you know that?
No, I'm not. I'm not fickle.
I thought I knew what that word meant before watching this show, but that word has gradually lost all meaning to me. And finally, when Ricky sucks cookie dough batter off of Grace's finger in season 1, drink to forget.
Hey, let me get that for you.
Does this count as oral?
And take another drink because Grace said oral. No, because let's actually break this entire scene down. Because if I had to watch it, y'all have to hear about it. So Ricky and Grace are baking 150 snickerdoodles. 150 snickerdoodles.
That's a lot of cookies.
Grace does not play around when it comes to cookies. Ricky, the snickerdoodle novice that he is, doesn't even know how to begin making 150 cookies.
So what do we do first?
Melt the butter.
So how do we melt the butter, Grace?
How do we melt the butter, Grace? How do we melt the butter, Grace? How do we melt the butter, Grace? I swear to God, Grace, if you don't tell me how to melt the butter, I, for one, do know how to make snickerdoodles and melt butter. Snickerdoodles are very similar to sugar cookies where the dough is very solid and you either roll it in a cylinder and slice it or you roll it flat and cut out circles. But Grace, when they're done making the cookies, supposedly, Grace is scooping out the wettest, gloopiest pieces of slime I've ever seen. I think they melted too much butter. And that, of course, is when this happens.
Hey, let me get that for you.
Does this count as oral?
I first saw that scene when I was 12 years old, and I think that actually explains a lot about the person I am today. Despite everyone on the show just being constantly horned up, there are no sex scenes in the show. There's barely even any makeouts. And when characters are about to hook up, they are fully clothed, shoes on the bed, and even when they cut to afterwards, they'll somehow have more layers of clothing on.
Lauren, I'm not dressed.
Oh my God.
One will be wearing a full tuxedo, and the other will be in a golden Freddy suit in the corner. But it's not just that the show was conservative in what they showed. I get it, it's a show on ABC Family. This show has also, in my opinion, been pretty fairly described as deeply pro-abstinence and pro-life. When I was 12, I watched this show in secret because it was, again, the most scandalous thing I could ever think about. Not only do these teens talk about sex so much, it also has the writing of a really bad porno. Not that I would know, of course. But it turns out that was the game all along. Get impressionable youths who watch something they think they shouldn't be watching, and then lecture them for 5 seasons about how sex is bad and you should never do it. You will get pregnant and married and divorced by 18, and you might even hook up with your brother. So just don't do it. Watching the show is like being a teenager sneaking out to meet your friends one night, only for them to take you to a late night Bible study session, you know? And that should really come as no surprise to anyone, because as I've mentioned, this show was created by Brenda Hampton. Brenda Hampton is best known for her other hit shows like Fat Actress and Seventh Heaven. Seventh Heaven was a 90s family drama about a pastor and his wife struggling to raise their 5 Christian children in the sinful, degenerate era of the 90s.
You want a piece of this? I brought 7 kids into this world. I can take one out.
And boy, did these Christian children get up to some hijinks.
Where did you get those pants? Do you know where that particular fashion trend got started? Prison.
In one episode, Lucy suspects a girl at her school is bulimic. So she invites this poor girl to dinner, hoping that when she gets up to the bathroom, Lucy can catch her in the act. This is how people entertain themselves before Subway Surfers, I guess. When the girl does get up to go to the bathroom, the mom follows her and finds out she's not bulimic. She's just brushing her braces. Oh, and she's poor.
I'm hungry.
What?
Which, in this universe, might be the only thing worse than having an eating disorder. In another episode, the dad finds just the skinniest, saddest little joint you've ever seen and goes to dramatically confront their children about this.
Is this why you've never held down a job?
But before he can, his wife reveals some devastating information.
I want you to know that I've smoked pot.
How could you? You witch woman. And who could forget the episode where the pastor tried to help a teenage girl in a gang? This shot is perfect to me. I love how all of these switchblades are just extended for no reason. I love how she has giant metal chains. The nunchucks. Even though the show was beyond corny, it was very much beloved. Of course, people feel a little differently about the show now that the actor who played the pastor dad has admitted to being a child predator. But there you have it. Secret Life premiered basically right after Seventh Heaven ended, and Brenda took as many people as she could from Seventh Heaven. I looked it up, 89 people to be exact. This includes Jeff Olson and social media star Chris Olson, who produced both series. I mean, he didn't have a headshot, so I'm assuming it's the same person. Eric Bradley wrote the music for both series and really did embed this 90s PSA energy right into this 2008 show.
Found me.
I need to emphasize again that this show was on at the same time as Glee and Pretty Little Liars. Breaks my brain to think about. Peter Pappas was the casting director and cast at least 15 actors from Seventh Heaven, the point being that this was Brenda Hampton's attempt at an edgier, less Christian version of Seventh Heaven. But just because the messaging is less overt than Seventh Heaven doesn't necessarily mean that the show is more progressive than Seventh Heaven. Hey, this wouldn't be an obnoxiously long video essay if I didn't include some tangentially related history from a century ago. Back in the 1920s, I'm not going to talk like that the whole time, Hollywood suffered a series of major scandals, from fun stuff like affairs to less fun stuff like murder. The public takeaway at the time was that the film industry in particular somehow predisposed those in the industry to moral indecency, kind of like being a Minecraft YouTuber today. In order to avoid, actually being regulated, the film industry decided to self-regulate and eventually came up with what we now know as the Hays Code. Although not enforced by law, the Hays Code prevented films from depicting controversial things like ridicule of the clergy and white slavery. If a character was deemed sexually deviant because they didn't conform to gender norms, had relationships outside of marriage, or, were just women who looked a little too sexy, these characters had to be punished by the narrative. While I was watching Secret Life, particularly the season 3 finale, I had the haunting realization that every sexually active teenager in the show is in some shape or form punished by the narrative for their transgressions, and seemingly the more promiscuous that character is, the bigger the punishment. Amy, of course, gets pregnant after having sex one time at band camp with Ricky. Also, the way this encounter is described is sort of murky on consent.
I'm not even sure it was sex, okay, guys?
Why not?
I don't know. I didn't exactly realize what was happening until after 2 seconds, and then it was just over.
Amy often says that she didn't know what was happening until it was over, and she cried afterward. Ricky also, I shit you not, in response to this, says that if I was going to take advantage of you, Amy, I would have used condoms.
If I had planned on taking advantage of you, I would have had a condom with me. But I didn't. So this isn't all my fault,
Ricky defenders explain that one. But of course, the writers of the show want parents, even teen parents, to be together and wed. So Amy later says that she did want to sleep with Ricky, and she viewed their experience as consensual, even if it was really bad for her. How romantic. Once Amy learns that she's pregnant, she is shamed by nearly everyone on the show for even considering an abortion.
I love you.
Please, help me get rid of this baby.
No abortion.
Options?
Well, I mean, if you don't really want to have a baby at 15.
You better not be suggesting she get an abortion.
Let's go.
I'm not gonna let you do this, Amy! You two drove her here. You're accessories to a crime.
Even her mom, who is supposed to be the progressive one who majored in women's studies, is like, I could never do it, Amy, but I guess I'll support you if that's what you want.
What if I just don't have the baby?
Amy, you can think about that. That's totally your choice, but I don't think I can tell you to do that. And it's not a religious thing with me at all.
Actually, the only one who supports Amy in that decision is Adrian.
This is a big decision to make all by yourself.
But it is her decision.
She's right.
And remind you, this is the villainous, promiscuous, single Latina character in this otherwise incredibly white main cast, and I'm sure there are no implications at all with that character choice. Then when Amy considers adoption for her baby, she is once again shunned by everyone except her mom.
You're not giving away my nephew.
Consider adoption. But please, after you consider it, consider just keeping the baby.
Not so sure we should have our grandchild adopted. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
A couple to adopt the baby. A couple who's willing to go along with an open adoption. We can all still be involved in his life, and yet he'll have 2 responsible adult parents who can take care of him.
That's kind of a theme with you, isn't it? Trying to get someone else to do what you should do.
Ricky says that he doesn't want her to end the pregnancy, he doesn't want the baby up for adoption, but he also does not intend to pay for or support this child in any way.
I'm not gonna change my mind. I don't want the baby adopted.
Fine. And it's yours.
Amy's parents are getting a divorce, and according to Anne, they're poor because her husband George made off with a bunch of money, so they can't really financially or emotionally support the baby either. Ashley is just the cruelest. She steals Amy's home video Amy made for her son to see when he grows up, and Ashley's like, I'm Amy. I care more about the prom and dating Ben than raising you, so I gave you up.
You're my son.
I think the baby's gonna buy that when he's 18.
I love you so much, but I gave you away because I didn't want to miss prom or homecoming.
Call me crazy, but I think if a 15-year-old girl doesn't feel ready to be a mother and wants to still enjoy what's left of her childhood, that is a morally neutral decision. She's not a bad person for wanting her son to be adopted by another loving family when she herself is a child with limited resources. But then Ashley makes a heartfelt plea for Amy to keep the baby. And by heartfelt, I mean she says it in the same monotone that Ashley says everything.
Please listen to me, Amy, please. You care too much. Yet not enough. Suppose you could be a real mother at 15 and raise a baby yourself. You can do this, Amy. You really can.
When the entire cast circles around Amy and promises her that they will help her raise this child, she decides that community care is cool. She will have the baby. Only for most of them to completely fall back on their promise and refuse to help Amy in any form.
Now you got to get over there and support her decision to keep the baby. And you do that by writing down every gift that she gets, writing down who gave it to her and their address so that she can send them a thank you note.
Okay, and that will fulfill my obligation as aunt for the child's lifetime? Look, just take the kid with you wherever you're going, because Aunt Ashley is not keeping him tonight.
Not only that, but Ashley and George take every chance they get to tell Amy that she ruined both her life and their lives by having this baby.
I would like to just have one summer in high school and not have to be responsible every single minute for someone else.
And whose fault is that?
And you didn't really care if you completely destroyed this family just to have a little fun at band camp.
And if that wasn't punishment enough, she has to be stuck in a love triangle where her two most eligible bachelors are Ben and Ricky. Adrian and Ricky are the two most promiscuous characters, for lack of a better word, and that can't just be because they enjoy it. They have to have traumatic reasons for that being the case. Adrian has abandonment issues from her father not being around and hooks up with people in the hopes that these people won't abandon her. Ricky says that he sleeps with so many women because he both wants to inflict the pain his father put on him as a young child, and also because he feels an emptiness from that childhood trauma. In season 5, when he's talking to his younger foster brother Ethan, he tells Ethan that because he slept with so many women, he can't feel anything with Amy, and that if Ethan even considers sleeping with someone he doesn't want to marry, the same will happen to him.
Every time you have sex, you give away a little piece of your heart. And you give that away too many times, and there's just nothing left.
Even though we've seen Ricky go to therapy throughout the show, he never goes to therapy to unpack that. We just move on like that's a perfectly healthy and reasonable thing for someone who's 18 years old to say. Returning to Adrian, in season 2, Ben and Adrian hook up because they both think Amy and Ricky hooked up, and even though they used multiple forms of protection, of course, all of their protection failed. And Adrian is now pregnant. Even though Ben thinks this child will ruin his life, he does not want Adrian to have this baby. He also doesn't want her to terminate the pregnancy, as everyone calls it, because they're all too scandalized to even say the word.
Did you terminate the pregnancy? She's too selfish to have a baby. So am I. Yet I'm too scared of her having an abortion.
If I had been pregnant and I decided to have an abortion, then that would be my decision, not your decision.
I disagree.
Grace says, "Hey, Adrian, don't you dare terminate that pregnancy. This is just what you get for sleeping with so many guys."
I'm the one who'd be having the abortion, not Happy Ben.
No, Adrian, that's not an option. I mean, you didn't get by some criminal or your father.
Oh, and also, Adrian, can you just pretend the baby is Ricky's because I, Grace, want to date Ben now for some reason?
It could still be Ricky's if you say it's Ricky's and not Ben's.
What?
Who do you want to marry? Ricky or Ben?
When Ben tells his dad, Leo, that Adrian is pregnant, Leo also doesn't want her to end the pregnancy and tells Adrian's very pro-life dad before Adrian can even get a chance to tell him she's pregnant herself. Adrian's dad, Ruben, says that if she doesn't have this baby, they will not be a family anymore.
Well, Adrian, then maybe we really shouldn't be a family.
Adrian's mom, Cindy, is more open-minded and says, "I'll support you in whatever you want to do." And Adrian says, "Okay, great. I want to go to law school. I'm not in love with Ben. I don't feel ready to have a child at 17. I think I want to go get an abortion." And Cindy says, "Sounds like you need to think about it some more."
I don't want to have a baby. I don't want to be pregnant.
It's okay, Adrian. It's okay. But if you want to take another day or two to think this over.
Then when Adrian is at the clinic, she runs into Ricky's foster mom, who is Rose from Lost. Rose from Lost is a social worker, and she doesn't tell Adrian what she should do either way. She just listens to Adrian talk through what she wants to do.
I don't want to be a teenage mother. I have goals. I have plans. I want to go to law school. I want to do something with my life. That's why I've always been so careful.
Once again, Adrian lists all the reasons that she doesn't want to have a child at 17. But with all that being said, she's going to have the baby now.
It's the right thing to do.
For me. Okay? For me, Dad.
I realized that for 2010, Adrian even contemplating her options on a teen drama was viewed as very progressive, but the show very clearly leans one way more than the other. I'd also be more forgiving of this character choice if the writers showed us how Adrian went from being totally against having a child to being super gung-ho about it. But because Adrian's motivations aren't clear here, it just feels even more apparent that the writers viewed Adrian choosing to have this baby as some sort of character redemption for Adrian when she was the villain in previous seasons, when, as I said earlier, these choices are morally neutral. Once Adrian decides she's going to have the baby, Leo and Ruben pressure Ben and Adrian into getting married, which they eventually agree to, and conveniently, they develop romantic feelings for each other. So this forced child marriage isn't seen as horrific. But then when Adrian goes into labor, their child doesn't survive. They have the nerve to reveal this information by having everyone cry in the lobby while the Sarah McLachlan dog commercial music is playing at an obnoxious volume. Ben almost immediately after this wants to divorce Adrian and comes to a breaking point when Adrian clears out their daughter's nursery without telling him first. He then says that they deserved to have their baby die for what they did, and that is also somehow all Adrian's fault.
Every single bit of pain that both of us have had has been because of you!
He does later apologize for saying this, but he still divorces Adrian. This entire plotline just felt so malicious to me. I do think it can be powerful to show things like miscarriages or stillbirth on TV because that's a thing a lot of people have experienced, and there is still a lot of stigma and shame surrounding it. But it also just felt like the writers in this case did not want Adrian to experience even an ounce of joy. Then there's Grace. Grace starts the show as a deeply religious teen who is waiting for marriage, but eventually Grace takes off her purity ring and decides that she does actually want to sleep with Jack, who is her boyfriend again. Initially, Grace says that it's because they love each other and she's thought about this and she feels ready, but after the fact, she admits she only did it because she thought Jack would leave her otherwise, because no one on this show can have intimacy for healthy reasons. That just doesn't exist. As Jack and Grace are in bed together, Grace's very pro-abstinence Christian father gets on a plane to provide medical aid in Africa. Grace's brother Tom points out, hey, isn't it a little ironic to be flying on a private jet to provide medical care in a poor country?
It doesn't seem right to fly to a third world country on a private jet.
Based, Tom. I'm right there with you. Well, it turns out that as Jack and Grace were going at it, there was an engine failure in the jet, and all of the doctors in the plane, including Grace's dad, died.
He's dead.
What? No one's dead. We just had sex.
What? You had sex?
Jack. Marshall's dead.
The evangelical guilt really takes a hold of Grace, and she becomes convinced that this was God's punishment for what she did.
I had sex, and now Dad is dead. And he had a horrible death because I had incredible sex.
And it's not just her who thinks that. Her own brother also yells at her for killing their dad.
You kill him!
What?
After this happens, Grace goes back to the teen abstinence group and performs this poem for everyone. Well, she calls it a limerick, but it's just not a limerick. Words have meaning. I'm sorry, Jesus, but I had sex. I don't know what happened. It's so complex. I promised I would wait until I was wed, and then despite that promise, I ended up in bed. I never thought that anything could feel so good. I thought maybe wives just do it because they think they should. But after all was said and done, I did feel guilty for having so much fun. So now I'm focused on being a surgeon as a way to not think about not being a virgin. The show got 121 episodes. Now, eventually Grace is able to overcome this guilt for murdering her dad, not because she has unpacked her evangelical guilt. It's because in season 4, she learns that her dad, who was, super pro-abstinence and judgy, actually was having a continuous affair with a woman in Africa, and he had a secret love child named Jacob, who is, of course, played by Jordan Fisher.
What's your mother like?
You know who Oprah is, don't you?
Your mom is Oprah?
So this whole time when her dad was shaming Grace, he was hanging out with his secret family while pretending to do aid work in Zimbabwe. So it turns out it wasn't Grace's fault that he died. It was his own fault. Flying private jets unnecessarily is one thing. It's a whole other thing to raise Jordan Fisher in secret. And by the end of the series, Grace still believes that she ruined her life by having premarital sex because that meant she was too busy thinking about relationships instead of studying to go to Harvard.
Forgive me, Lord, I have ruined my life with sex. I could have been somebody. I could have been a contender.
So yeah, I would say the show, despite being centered on teens wanting to have sex, is pretty pro-abstinence. I guess I didn't expect the show to be like super sex positive. I do think there is probably something to be said about casual relationships or physical intimacy carrying more emotional risk when you're a teenager versus when you're an adult. As you can probably see, I'm not a teen, nor do I have a kid myself, so honestly, I am probably not the best judge of how these topics should be introduced to teens watching the show at home. But I will say, letting a character think that they killed their own father by hooking up one time with someone they love, that probably doesn't send the most positive message. I was, however, slightly delighted to find that as much as I disliked the show's moral messaging, so did Christian fundamentalist lobbying group Focus on the Family. Focus on the Family actually wrote several reviews of the show based on how they reference plot lines across different seasons. I'm fairly certain that someone at Focus on the Family just watched this whole show. So let me read out their review because I actually think it's incredible. Right from its Bird and the Bees laden title sequence, the show has always been preoccupied with sex and all of its many, many trappings. Teens hook up, break up, and make up with a startling frequency, ushering into the show a host of hot-button issues ranging from promiscuity and abstinence to abortion and child abuse. While the first season focused primarily on teen pregnancy, the upshot of Amy Jerkins and Ricky Underwood's one-night stand at band camp, and a whole lot of will they won't they tension, the show's scope has subsequently broadened. But little glimmers of conscience like that don't mitigate the fact that Secret Life is a servile soap, as explicit in its own way as Gossip Girl, and with far less artistic merit. Author and youth culture expert Walt Mueller believes that the show's themes and blatant sexual dialogue could inspire healthy discussion between parents and teens. But he also warns, if that doesn't happen, the show could function as a pretty powerful mentor and map for kids looking for sexual and relational guidance. Plugged In, that's Focus on the Family's Bob Smithhauser, turned that thought into this analogy when the series got started. In Michael Crichton's novel Jurassic Park, scientists clone dinosaurs by using DNA extracted from prehistoric mosquitoes, but there are gaps in the genetic code, so they substitute frog DNA in order to complete the strands and finish the job, which seems to do the trick, until that shortcut yields disastrous results. The same thing can happen with children and entertainment. Like Crichton's geneticists, young people attempt to make sense of their world by piecing together bits of information. When they face a decision and lack first-hand experience, or a thorough understanding of an issue, they can subconsciously fill in those gaps with what they've seen in the media, their frog DNA. That can be a risky proposition, especially for preteens developing expectations for their high school years based on TV dramas like The Secret Life of the American Teenager. Reading this article made me feel like that one clickhole meme. Focus on the Family is approaching the show from, cannot emphasize this enough, the complete opposite end of the political spectrum from my own, but they're not wrong that the media teens watch does shape their worldview in a lot of ways. And when those sensitive topics aren't talked about with sensitivity, it can be really damaging. Again, I'm not a parent and haven't been a teen for a while, but I also question the choice to have every single character on the show have no other interests or personality traits beyond marriage and sex. Considering that the show's goal ultimately was to encourage teen abstinence, isn't it kind of odd to make physical intimacy the only important thing in those teens' lives? Don't get me wrong, I very much valued relationships way more than I should have in high school, and to an extent, these characters are kind of a reflection of that thinking amongst teens. But I think the show missed an opportunity to show young people that there is more to life than romantic relationships when they're young. Yes, the parents in the show try to tell their kids that sometimes, but how is that actually shown through the action on the show? And far more often, their parents are just like, are you gonna do it? Don't you dare do it. You made eye contact with a boy at Trader Joe's. Are you two getting married now? See, even Goose is losing it. So what I'm trying to say is this show not only worked as abstinence pro-life propaganda, it was also really bad at being that. You may be thinking, if this is how Brenda Hampton feels about sex and marriage, what exactly does she think about gay people? I'll be honest, going into this show, I just assumed gay people... You good? I just assumed gay people wouldn't exist in this universe. Adrian's I Recycle Boys graphic t-shirt was all the representation I could ever need. But actually, to my surprise, there are in fact gay people on the show. Several, in fact. Gay relationships even. Gay storylines. Throughout the entire 5 seasons of the show. Is that representation good? Well, I definitely wouldn't say that it holds up in 2025, or really in any year before maybe like 2013. But honestly, for how bad the show was, I was expecting much worse. Now, don't say I never said anything nice about this show. The first gay character to appear in the show is Donovan, George's employee at the furniture store. Donovan has been with his partner Leon for 10 years, and they consider themselves married.
His partner of 10 years. They consider themselves married.
In season 1, they invite George over for dinner, which George is very excited about.
I'm so happy you're here.
Happy to be here. You queens live like kings. You guys are such great cooks. Man, who wouldn't want to live here? You gays.
It turns out that Donovan only works at this furniture store for fun. And they're actually super rich because Leon had a very successful organic babies clothing line. And now they just foster children and feed their pet straight man, George. But since George has told them that Amy is thinking about adoption, they asked George if he would consider, and immediately, I'm clenched. I know that the show is not going to end with Amy having her baby adopted by a loving family in season 1, so I was very much expecting some sort of homophobic plotline as to why these two lovely people don't end up adopting the baby. Luckily, it never comes. Anne is also very much on board. It turns out that they only asked George instead of Anne because they were worried George would be the homophobic one. But they learned that just because George looks like he pronounces Chipotle Chipotle doesn't mean that he's a bigot.
But I am not interested in discussing conversion therapy or transsexual surgery with you.
It's called gender reassignment surgery.
Amy is also immediately excited about Donovan and Leon adopting her son. Everyone agrees that this is a win-win solution. Amy doesn't feel ready to have a child, but the child could be close with a family she knows and trusts. And this gay couple would be able to adopt when, in the early 2000s, that was not the easiest thing for them to do. But as I said, there wouldn't really be a show if that actually happened. So instead, Ricky tells Donovan and Leon about his trauma in the foster care system and how no one is interested in adopting an older kid with trauma like him. This is partly Ricky trying to ruin the chances at adoption, but it's also Ricky's real feelings about his upbringing and the adoption system. So ultimately, Donovan and Leon agree that even if Ricky did want the adoption, there are a lot of older kids that need their help, and they decide to continue being foster parents. We never see Leon again after this episode, but Donovan actually makes a few more appearances, mostly for George to complain about women getting divorces and taking the kids when you cheat on them. And then later in season 4, he returns to help Jennifer Coolidge decorate her college dorm.
Gay. Have you ever thought about being gay?
Long story. We'll get there. We eventually learn that Donovan and Leon adopt more older kids, and Donovan becomes George's official partner at the furniture store. Our next gay character to appear is Griffin, and this 24-year-old is here to deliver the straightest performance of a gay 15-year-old boy you ever did see.
I'm your fairy godbrother.
Griffin is actually Ashley's new gay best friend, and the mean girl, gay man duo, unstoppable force, let me tell you. When the two of them meet, they both agree that they are swearing off boys for the rest of high school. Griffin is also already out when Ashley meets him, and according to Griffin, being gay has been pretty easy for him, as long as you don't count the 57 times he was beat up for having a crush on Al Gore as a child.
Got the crap beat out of me 57 times in elementary school for having a crush on Al Gore.
But don't worry, Griffin is a log cabin Republican and immediately notes that he is not an Al Gore fan.
I don't agree with his politics, but I don't know, that smile, I don't know.
But because both of Griffin's older brothers were also gay, by the time Griffin came out to his parents, no one really cared that he was gay. Then a guy named Mark tries to approach Ashley for a date.
Ashley's made a commitment not to date in high school.
I don't want to go out with her. I just want to marry her and have children with her.
And this somehow immediately convinces Ashley that she should give up on giving up boys. I hate to say it, but some more real Luke P energy. But Mark is worried that because he went to the teen abstinence group with Griffin, his mom, who is watching Ashley and Mark on the porch, will think that he is also gay.
My mom's in the car with Griffin right now, and I'm kind of nervous she's going to think I'm gay, so I was hoping I could make a display of affection towards you.
But Ashley loved queer as folk. She worked in queer media. She's an ally. She's not kissing a homophobe.
I'm not gonna kiss you just so your mother won't think you're gay. And if you're homophobic, I don't want anything to do with you.
Later on, Grace decides that she wants to have a double date with Griffin's cousin Grant and Griffin. Only thing is, Griffin doesn't have a date. Well, don't you worry, Griffin. Grace knows one other gay person in town, and I'm sure you'll be perfect together. And his name is Peter. Peter and Griffin. Peter Griffin. Only the thing is that this guy actually isn't gay. He's just what the 2000s called a metrosexual. Only double plot twist. Griffin already knows that Peter is secretly gay because Griffin saw him at gay nights at Ed's.
I see what Ed's on Thursday nights. Gay nights? You're at Ed's on gay nights?
And Peter thanks Griffin for not outing him. Griffin then hands Peter his business card, which he presumably carries on his person at all times, and says that if you ever do come out, call me. But triple plot twist, Peter's parents knew that Peter was gay, and they actually told Grace to set Peter up with Griffin because they love him so much, and they decided to, come out for him.
We don't care if you're straight or not straight.
Is this, in retrospect, kind of violating Peter's ability to come out on his own terms when he's ready? Well, yes. But you know what? This show never does a coming out to homophobic parents storyline. And honestly, it's kind of refreshing. I don't need to see that cough syrup scene from Glee again. It's weirdly sweet to have the show where homophobia just doesn't really meaningfully impact people's lives. Peter and Griffin, Peter Griffin, continue to date for the rest of the series, as shown by this dancing scene where they save plenty of room for Jesus, and this truly passionless peck we see in season 3. Oh, but we're not done. There are plenty more gays. The next gay character we see is Nora. She's Ricky's mother who dealt with alcoholism and drug addiction, but she comes back into Ricky's life after she's out of prison, she's sober, and she's in therapy. Genuinely, Nora is probably one of my favorite characters. I keep saying this, but the show really did have a knack for casting hot moms, and Nora is no exception. Nora dates a public defender named Ollie, and Ricky says that he doesn't care if they get married. He loves Queer Eye.
So, it would be okay with you?
Why wouldn't it be okay with me?
I don't know.
Although I will say that Darren Kagasoff is not exactly selling me on Ricky being the ultimate ally in this scene. But that is at least what the writers intended this to be. Nora is also the queer character with the most development on the show. When Ricky and her first reunite, they're rebuilding their relationship after they both suffered years of abuse from her ex-husband, and Nora is trying to turn her life around. Leo offers Nora a job at the butcher shop, and it turns out Nora knows a lot about meat.
Give me a steak. Make that 2 of them.
Coming right up. Wait till you see what this does for your sex life. Protein equals protein, my friend.
Leo is actually so pleased with her work that he eventually promotes her to work in his office. Nora briefly relapses with her alcoholism, which does drive a wedge between her and Ricky, but she's eventually able to recommit to her sobriety, and she becomes a great grandparent to John. She also becomes best friends with George, despite George initially hitting on her when they first met. It is very rare for the show to have plot lines that aren't just relationship drama. So I really appreciate both that Nora's queerness was an essential part of her character, but also she had a personality and life outside of that. So once again, exceeded my low expectations of this show. The last, at least significant gay character on the show is Anne. See, after Anne got pregnant in season 2, the writers really struggled to give Molly Ringwald any plot lines besides constantly divorcing and getting back together with George, which was exhausting for me to watch. But in season 4, Molly Ringwald approached Brenda with an actual storyline for her character that, maybe had a fighting chance at even passing the Bechdel test. Anne was gay now. Because Ricky was immediately accepting of Nora, and Nora had already come to terms with her queerness by the time she comes on the show, Anne's character basically is like a prequel to the Nora arc. You're meant to see her come to terms with her sexual orientation, adjust to that, come out to her family. But this is Secret Life. It has to be just a little bit silly. So to kick off this storyline, George sees Anne talking to Nora. And says, "Hey Anne, talking to a lesbian? That's pretty gay." don't you think? And Anne says, George, looking at a lesbian doesn't make you gay. Except in this case, it does. It does make you gay. And again, I can't blame her, because have you seen Nora? Then for several episodes, George just goes around repeating himself about how Anne is gay because she looked at Nora, and we just have to keep repeating the scene over and over again because the season still has 24 episodes and we have to fill that space somehow. Anne then runs off with Ashley to the gayest country of all, France. When she's there, a store clerk overhears Anne telling Ashley that she's not sure if she's straight, and if there's one thing queer women love, it's dating a woman who is unsure whether they actually like women. So Anne goes on a date with this French woman, and they kiss off screen. We don't have time for that somehow. We need to watch more of Amy and Ricky fighting over their wedding plans for the 100th episode. But it turns out that while Anne was in France, George told his ex-wife Kathleen, who he's now dating again, that it's okay that they're together because he's pretty sure Anne is gay anyways. Kathleen reverts back to Kathleen with season 1 hair and immediately outs Anne to Grace, who texts the entire school and Jennifer Coolidge about how Amy's mom is gay.
Anne is gay.
Naturally, the entire school now thinks that Amy is also gay because in this universe, the gay gene is real, and also Amy and Ricky are getting married on the 4th of July, which is a gay holiday.
She's getting married to Ricky on the 4th of July.
Oh, good choice. It's my favorite holiday.
What's gay about the 4th of July? Hot dogs?
Could it be volleyball? Uncle Sam.
Shorts, bandanas, visors.
Fireworks, sparklers, parades.
Sounds as if you've taken a couple of stereotypical images and gone to the limit with them.
Not only is it a gay holiday, it is, as Brenda Hampton calls it, Gay Liberation Day.
It's Gay Liberation Day or something?
Forget the 4th of July. You know, it took the gay community so long to get their own holiday. Let's just let them have it.
Yep. That's right. The gays really loved the 4th of July in 2012. Amy is very upset about this because she's not gay. Her mom isn't gay. The 4th of July isn't a gay holiday. Not that she's homophobic or anything. She just knows that she's deeply heterosexual.
I am not gay. My mother is not gay. I am not gay. I am getting married, and the 4th of July is not some kind of gay holiday.
And when Griffin hears the rumors that Amy might be gay, he goes over to have a sleepover with Nora and George. Not Ashley. Ashley is still in France. Griffin just wants to talk to his friend's dad about his potentially gay relatives. You know how gay people are. Anne comes back from France and tells Ashley and George that she really is gay. And I'll be honest, even though this plotline feels like it came out of nowhere, Molly Ringwald really sells me on it when she comes out to George.
I'm really kind of excited. But also kind of scared. Scared that my family won't love me anymore.
Oh. We're still gonna love you?
Despite George outing Anne at every possible second this season, George is actually very supportive of Anne and says that they'll always be a family. But then there's Amy. Yeah, you know how we managed to have 4 seasons without a coming out to homophobe storyline? Well, we're about to get one. The episode where Anne officially comes out is called, of course, Love is Love. And to give a little bit of credit, this episode was the only episode co-written by Anne Ramsey, who plays Nora on the show, and she is a queer woman herself in real life. At the end of the episode, Anne comes out to Amy, but it turns out that that is not Anne's decision. That's Amy's decision.
Mom, you're not gay.
Yes, I am gay.
No, you're not. You might think you are, but you're not.
Get back in the closet. Go on, get in there. A lot of Secret Life fans rightfully drag Amy for this moment because this isn't just a one-time thing. Even after Amy comes back and apologizes to Anne, she continues to tell other people that she's pretty sure Anne is just going through a phase and will get back with her dad eventually.
I just would not be comfortable with her on a date, gay or straight.
The date is not going to be straight.
Not if the wedding's anytime soon, no.
Also, part of why Amy keeps delaying her wedding in season 5 is because she's worried that Anne would bring a date. Not because she's homophobic, of course, but because the writers need more conflict for season 5. Now, as a famed Amy apologist, I will give Amy a little bit of grace here. Even though Amy is very insensitive to her mother, I think this episode does speak to a real experience people go through when one of their parents comes out to them later in their life. I think it is totally plausible for some kids to have a hard time accepting their newly out parent because it may feel like there's suddenly been this big secret between your parent and you your whole life. It can change the way you view your parents' relationship. And for Amy in particular, it confirms to her that her parents will never get back together, which she still wants for some reason. I think the writers were trying to show those complicated emotions, except this is Secret Life, and the writers don't handle nuance well. Because the thing is, Amy is also mad at George this season for getting back with his first wife, Kathleen. But Amy apparently has no problem inviting George to the wedding, even though she refuses to invite her mom, who may bring a woman as a date. She also continues speaking to George when he's dating Kathleen, but she specifically says that she's icing her mom out. And this is even after Amy apologized for not being supportive. Then when George announces he's going to sell their family home, Amy is like, Mom, why do you care about this house? Aren't you gay anyways? You gays don't care about real estate. You only care about Tegan and Sarah. If they showed that Amy realized that she was being homophobic, that would be one thing, but they never really do. So yeah, I think Amy may be just the one canonically homophobic main character. And that's a shame. Oh wait, we still haven't talked about Grace. There was going to be one main cast queer character on this show. I absolutely would have thought it'd be Grace. Grace starts off as this peppy, conservative Christian girl. She doesn't want to have sex before marriage, and she also doesn't want to get married until after she's out of medical school. But throughout the show, we see her almost deconstruct. She has sex, which yes, does kill her father in a plane crash, but she also becomes less judgmental about other people's sex lives. She starts to make decisions for herself that aren't just based on what she thinks God and her parents would want her to do. And let's just be honest, her and Adrian have a vibe.
Don't even know why you'd want to be my friend. Because you make me feel like I'm somebody.
In season 1, after Grace finds out that Ricky has been sleeping with Adrian the entire time he's been dating Grace, Grace and Adrian decide that they're going to have a cat fight in the hallway. This is basically the Paul v. Tyson fight, if it was any good.
Are you gonna say a prayer, you little Bible-thumping, two-faced virgin?
Yeah, maybe I will. God help Adrian because she's a bitch.
Then they start fighting, and by that I mean they just hold each other's shoulders for a little while and go in circles. They did their own stunts here, can you believe? But then they just start laughing while they hold each other's faces in their hands. Turns out they don't care about Ricky. They're best friends now. I am telling you, they walked so that Maddie and Cassie could run. Throughout the show, their relationship becomes one of my favorite things to watch. They have their moments where they fight, but most of the time they just love each other. Then in season 4, Grace and Adrian decide that they want to live together over the summer and swear off boys together. Grace is so desperate to do this that she skips med camp, even though supposedly her going to this medical camp for the 3rd year in a row would somehow guarantee her admission to Ivy League schools. But no, she wants to live with Adrian this summer and swear off boys for totally platonic reasons instead. Then there's a heat wave over the summer. For some reason, the writers put in a scene where Adrian and Grace are just hanging out in their underwear because they can't find the thermostat. These are also still canonically high school girls at this point, so I would just love to know the thought process behind that scene. Oh, but then when rumors are all over the school that Amy is gay, Grace asks Adrian if she's ever thought about kissing a girl. Specifically, Adrian, have you ever thought about kissing me? Because I sure have thought about kissing you.
I've thought about kissing a woman anyway.
Not me.
You know, of course not you.
Why not me? I thought about kissing you. Oh my God, I did not.
Grace is so panicked over her admitting this out loud that she immediately reaches out to 2 of her ex-boyfriends and begs them to hook up with her in front of Adrian to prove that she is profoundly heterosexual and not into Adrian at all. But later, Adrian and Grace start talking about wanting to kiss girls again, you know, as you do.
No, honestly, I've never even thought about it until I heard that Katy Perry song.
Yeah, so because they're just such big Katy Perry fans, they kiss.
Kiss me.
Grace immediately panics and runs to Jack to try and hook up with him again, you know, to prove that she's straight. But then Jack is like, wait, you kissed Adrian? That's so hot. How about you kiss her again to prove that you're not gay in front of me? And Grace is like, yeah, that checks out. Let's do it. Grace and Adrian kiss again.
Could you kiss me again?
Wow. Goodbye, Omar. Let's try that again.
Grace is still having a compet panic attack over her possibly being gay, and her mom is like, hey, that's cool. I don't want you kissing anyone, man or woman. Equality.
I don't
like you're having sex with a girl right now any more than I like you're having sex with a guy right now.
I believe in sexual repression for everyone. Maybe, Grace, you should experiment with your sexuality in non-sexual ways. Now, what does that actually mean, Kathleen? Just listen to Boy Genius and join the softball team? Yes, actually, that is exactly what the writers mean. Grace wears this to school, which I think might actually be the most offensive thing the show has done to the queer community so far. It also turns out that even though Adrian was curious about kissing a girl, her apparent true motivation behind this whole kissing Grace thing that she never mentioned was that she wanted the school to gossip about her and think that she's cool. And Adrian's mom has to explain to Adrian that homophobia in fact exists and queer baiting is bad. Also, they kissed in private, so that doesn't even make sense. Then the school's one lesbian, who we have never seen before, we'll never see again, appears to lecture Adrian about how homophobia is bad. Listen, not all of us have a gay family like Griffin.
It's not easy being gay in high school. Oh, sure, there's Griffin, whose entire family seems to be gay, so he's had things maybe a little easier than the rest of us.
And you know what this lesbian's name is, by the way? Fern. Her name is Fern. But after that one beautiful moment where Grace experimented with lesbian attire, Grace decides that although she has no problems with lesbian, gays, bisexuals, trans, or questioning, she does in fact think that she's going to hell for kissing Adrian, and she reverts right back to season 1 Grace. She is now an outspoken Christian, and she doesn't speak to Adrian for the entirety of season 5. Can you imagine if in season 3 of Sherlock and John kissed, and then John was just immediately like, I know who you are. I'm going to spend season 4 hanging out with J.K. Rowling and listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. The way the show for a split second gave me hope and then just continuously crushed my spirit by destroying my favorite relationship on the show, I will never forgive them. Oh, and also, while we're talking about gay representation, there's also Dr. Segay. He's straight, but I feel like his name deserves an honorable mention. Okay, but outside of the canonically queer characters, I do find it funny just how often characters on the show will reference gay people in like the most awkward way.
I also had a really good summer.
Yeah, I heard you went on vacation in lesbian land.
Are any of you familiar with Seinfeld? There's this one episode where Jerry and George are constantly mistaken for a gay couple, and whenever George and Jerry try to explain that they're not gay, they say, not that there's anything wrong with that.
We're not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely. No, everyone's gonna think we're gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, not at all.
It's not true! Not that there's anything wrong with that!
This episode aired in 1993, and especially at the time, it would have been pretty typical sitcom hijinks for the characters to be like, what? I'm not gay. I'm the straightest little guy around, and just leave it at that. And a big part of Seinfeld was also that these people were all terrible, selfish people. But the show took the time to be like, hey, they may be terrible, but they're not homophobes. In the 90s, having characters on such a big show repeatedly say that being gay was fine was actually groundbreaking. Seinfeld won a GLAAD award for this episode. It is still pointed to today as a major breakthrough in LGBT depiction in media. Now, importantly, Seinfeld was a comedy. It's meant to be silly that Jerry and George are clarifying that they're not homophobes so many times. On Secret Life of the American Teenager, this I'm not gay but I love gay people bit is said so many times, both in silly moments, yes, but also just with full sincerity.
Scared and gay Garrison.
That's pretty gay.
Yeah, not that anyone has a problem with it.
Before you say anything, I have nothing against lesbians or gays or bis or trans or anyone questioning what they are. I just know what I am.
I have nothing against gay guys. I'm not one of them.
I'm not into guys. Not that I have an issue with guys that are. I'm just not.
It's actually kind of incredible how the show is literally what Seinfeld was joking about in an episode from the 90s, like 2 full decades before Secret Life. The writers also love to constantly throw in little jokes about how, yeah, a lot of their characters do give kind of a queer vibe. And I can't even be mad at them for that because it's like exactly what I was thinking before they said it out loud.
And with the two of them is Lauren and Madison.
Lesbians?
Not yet.
They're swearing off sex. No, not swearing off sex. Swearing off sex with the guys.
They're lesbians now?
She's in the closet, you know. What? Alice is gay?
No, she's in your closet.
It may be silly at times, but I actually really did enjoy just how often gay people came up in this show. Granted, most of their gay characters didn't really get significant storylines compared to the straight characters. I would probably be more critical if the show came out today, but this show introduced gay characters in 2008, and I think their inclusion was coming from a place of earnestly wanting to have positive gay characters in teen media. As is the case with many long-running shows, there are a lot of plot lines introduced over the years in Secret Life, and a fair amount of them just do not stick. Sometimes it's because the audience isn't receptive to it. Other times an actor has to leave for another project, unceremoniously ending their time on the show. Or it's because the writers just straight up forgot because they were too busy showing Ricky and Amy fighting for the 100th time. This makes Secret Life fairly confusing to watch because sometimes a character will briefly mention something in one conversation, and then 4 episodes later, it'll be reintroduced as a major story element that you were definitely expected to remember. Like how one time Tom gets into a fight with a guy at the courthouse who is interviewing for the same job as him, but it turns out like 5 episodes later that this guy is the CEO of a major company. His name is Milton, by the way. Why was he interviewing for the same low-level court position as Tom if he owned his own company? Don't worry about that. Milton is here now, and he wants Tom to be his head of human resources. Oh, and also when Tom marries a woman named Rachel, Milton decides that he's gonna date Rachel and steal his disabled employee's wife. But don't worry, Tom is totally fine with that.
Is that your girl?
I know you met her. She told me all about it.
And?
And then, you guessed it, Milton and Rachel leave, never to be seen again. Other times, though, crazy plot lines like that are introduced and there is just no resolution whatsoever. Like the time a second pregnant teenager starts following Ben around because she thinks Ben has a thing for pregnant women.
I just thought, you must be into pregnant girls and I could use a friend.
She honestly might not be wrong. Or when Mimsy, an elderly woman with Alzheimer's, marries a man who claims that he had no idea that she had Alzheimer's and was super wealthy.
Mimsy, baby. I got here as quickly as I could.
Neither of these characters are ever mentioned after their 1 episode appearance. And I just wanted to take this time to name some of my favorite forgotten plot lines. Well, favorite might be a strong word, but certainly the ones that stay on my mind. Number 1, Jack and disadvantaged youth. In season 1, after Ben and Amy try to get married using fake IDs and also give everyone else their fake IDs as like a party favor, I guess.
Here you go.
That doesn't even look like me.
The principal of their school says, will anyone with a fake ID just come to the principal's office to get punished?
But first, they're going to have to catch me and prove that I'm running a shop.
May I have your attention, please? Students possessing fake IDs should report to Mr. Molina's office immediately.
Now, why don't more people do that? We probably would have caught the Zodiac Killer by now if we just asked him nicely to turn himself in. Even though Jack did not make these fake IDs, nor was it even his idea to get them, Jack gathers up everyone's fake IDs, which they, of course, all brought with them to school, and says, it was me. I made the fake IDs. I'm the brains behind this operation. Even though the guidance counselor knows it wasn't Jack, they decide as punishment for his crime, Jack has to mentor a disadvantaged youth on the rough side of town.
Here's the information. Do I get a gun with this? This is a gang area.
Jack's mentee is Duncan, a 14-year-old boy with a hot older sister who just so happened to be my gay awakening Maya from Pretty Little Liars. But the Pretty Little Liars parallels do not stop there. It's not clear how old Maya is on the show, other than she is for sure an adult and in college, and Jack is 16 years old. So naturally, they start dating. Duncan is upset about this, and he tricks Jack into selling candy bars for other disadvantaged youths.
For $5? I don't know, that's a little steep.
It's for disadvantaged youth.
Only to steal the money from Jack, and when Jack comically drops his car keys, take his car as well.
$200, about $200. Hey, that money's for disadvantaged youth.
When Jack accuses Duncan of robbing him, Duncan says, hey man, pretty racist of you to assume that was me.
I think you're the one that's prejudiced. I'm colorblind. I don't even see color.
This was one of the most popular shows on television. I need to keep reminding you that. Meanwhile, Maya is like, I don't know if we should date Jack. I mean, you are a minor after all. But then she's like, meh, What's a little predation among friends, am I right? I think I will start confronting the other minors you hooked up with before you even met me.
Are you the slut that had oral sex with Jack and broke him up with his girlfriend?
Oh, no. This is the slut's condo, but I'm just answering the door.
Maya and Duncan are never seen or mentioned again. Number 2. That guidance counselor sure does hate his wife. The first guidance counselor on the show, Mark Molina, or as I like to call him, Republican Trevor Noah, is a former cop turned guidance counselor.
I'm just a cop with teaching credentials and a background in psychology. I had a hard time choosing a major.
See, he didn't want to leave the force, but his dumb broad of a girlfriend made him quit so he could work in a high school. Mark also tells Ben that one time his girlfriend broke down his door in a jealous rage. You know, normal things you share with students. Later in the season, he's wearing a wedding band, and Ben is like, wait, I thought you hated your girlfriend.
Well, seems to me from what you told me and my dad about your girlfriend, your cousin would have been a better choice.
Genuinely, I had no recollection of that first conversation they had, so this was very confusing for me to watch. Then for some reason, Mark's pregnant wife just goes to Amy's baby shower and hits Grace's car in the parking lot. But I guess the teen audience of this show wasn't that interested in the guidance counselor's unhealthy relationships because the wife is never seen again, and Mark also quits his job a few episodes into season 2. Number 3, Ben is targeted by the Italian mafia. As a longtime Ben hater, I really am sad that this plotline was never resolved. In season 2, Ben is really pissed off at Amy because, she won't hook up with him right after giving birth.
And she looks like a hooker.
Yeah, well, I might be getting a hooker soon if we don't have some sort of contact in the near future.
And she has the nerve to have cleavage while breastfeeding? How is Ben supposed to endure this? Ben's dad decides that to help out his little incel son, he is going to send Ben to work at his uncle's hotel in Bologna, Italy. This is very scandalous to everyone because, as we all know, Bologna is known for one thing and one thing only.
Known for oral sex.
Come on, every city in Europe's known for sex, same in Asia. No one seems to come here to America for sex. Not willingly, anyway.
People don't go to Bologna to get away. They go there for something else entirely.
I know what they go there for.
Did you know that Bologna is known for...
Yes. Urban legend, probably.
I can only assume this is a very true fact about Bologna, by the way. So Amy is very worried that Ben is going to try and, get some Bologna in Bologna because he's not getting it here, that's for sure. While Ben is in Italy, he stops calling Amy entirely, and when he gets back, suddenly he's not acting like a creepy little perv anymore. Could this be character growth? No, of course not. It turns out that Ben did in fact get the Bologna special with a girl named Maria. Does he tell Amy any of this? No, why would he? But while everyone except Amy is hanging out on some random beach, a very enthusiastic Italian girl runs right up and jumps on Ben.
Ben! Benito!
It's Maria, and she actually lives in Ben's closet now.
Benito, you found me!
Leo walks in on their little makeout sesh and is horrified. Not because Ben is cheating on his girlfriend. Who cares about that?
Do you know who her father is?
I've met him.
Do you know who he is?
Maria's dad is the head of a powerful Italian crime ring. And if Ben even thinks about breaking up with Maria, he is going to star in The Godfather 4. Unfortunately, we never see these threats carried out. Maria is never mentioned again. It's real disappointing. The sheer amount of plot lines that are introduced in season 1 and season 2 of this show, never to be mentioned again, is wild. I truly believe that Brenda thought the show would get immediately canceled, so she was just throwing all the Bologna at the wall to see what stuck. And then by seasons 3, 4, and 5, she didn't have any ideas because she had already written and wrote off so many in the first 2 seasons. That being said, though, the show surprisingly did not have a lot of the mandatory teen drama plot lines. There's no plagiarism scandal, no eating disorder plotline, no teacher-student relationships, not even a Drake in a wheelchair. Even the alcohol and weed episodes were very rare. And in a way, I'm glad that we didn't see a lot of these cliches because I do not have faith that these arcs would have been tastefully depicted on the show anyways. But that does mean that the only driving action in this show is pregnancy and dating. Literally nothing else. Because this show only has plot lines related to relationship drama, the showrunners really only have 3 options. People get together, they break up, or someone cheats on the other. Sometimes that cheating leads to breakups, other times it is straight up just never addressed. The other person never finds out, and truly no one cares at all. In season 1 of the show, George cheats on beautiful Molly Ringwald with Adrian's mom Cindy, who is also a babe, and this is the downfall of their marriage. So Anne and George spend the rest of season 1 and part of season 2 trying to get back together. That is, they do try and get back together until Anne finds out that George actually cheated on her again with an unnamed woman, totally off screen.
If you did want to get married, you wouldn't want me to know that you cheated. Again.
And no, there was no foreshadowing or hint that that was going on at all. But a lot of times someone will just casually mention that they cheated on their partner and no one moves, no one cares. Grace is very upset that Jack cheated on her with Madison over the summer when it casually slips out that she also hooked up with Madison's boyfriend behind Jack's back.
Why do you want to go into detail?
Because I want to compare.
Compare what?
What you and Madison did to what Jason and I did.
This is, of course, never addressed again beyond that one scene, and honestly, neither of them even seem that upset. I am telling you that everyone in the main cast has both cheated and been cheated on. Let's start with emotional cheating, because I think that can fall into a gray area where reasonable minds may differ on what actually constitutes cheating. So let's just run through some examples. Basically, anytime Ben is in a relationship with someone who is not Amy, he is very upset that he's not with Amy and will tell Amy, I'm in love with you, please take me back. But also don't tell my girlfriend I said that, please. Also, a big arc in season 5 is Ricky's friendship with a girl named Clementine. Amy is very jealous that Ricky has a female friend, and at first this seems incredibly irrational because Amy has a really strong reaction.
I was gonna tell you about walking her over. The cop was with us the whole time.
Did you kiss her? Who'd you have dinner with?
I haven't eaten. I left you a message and said I'd pick up something if you wanted, but maybe you didn't get that because you were listening to the 47 other messages I left you.
But all we've seen of Clementine to this point is her saying, let me introduce myself to Amy to assure her I'm not interested. Ricky, don't walk me home because I don't want Amy to get stressed. Let's not hang out by ourselves because I think Amy wouldn't be okay with that. But then it turns out that she is in love with Ricky. She writes him a letter saying he shouldn't get married and that he should just leave Amy for her. Ricky also then dreams about leaving Amy and hooking up with Clementine, which, yes, you can't control your dreams, but in the world of lazy TV writing, dreams are meant to show a person's secret desire that they're not voicing out loud. So Ricky, for sure, does have romantic feelings for Clementine, and he's not telling Amy about it. Ricky does eventually, not right away, tell Clementine that he's not interested in her and he's staying with Amy, but he never tells Amy that any of this is going on. Instead, he just yells at her because women be talking.
There's nothing wrong with our relationship, other than you're a little nuts.
Well, I can't help it. You shouldn't keep things from me.
I was gonna tell you about walking her over. If I had told you that last night, you'd think I stayed with her or something.
There's also another time where Ricky tells Amy that Adrian called him wanting him back, but don't worry, he deleted that voicemail.
Now you tell me Adrian called you about.
I don't know. I erased the message.
Without listening to it?
Without listening to it.
I've been thinking about you, and I know you've been thinking about me. Message saved.
Later on, Amy discovers that Adrian actually called multiple times, and he actually saved those voicemails.
I'm not hiding anything.
Which doesn't mean that you don't have messages from Adrian. Text messages or phone messages on your phone from Adrian.
Either you trust me or you don't.
But Ricky says that he saved these voicemails as a paper trail. Never mind the fact that he said he deleted them before. Who cares about that?
They were meant to be a record, so if you ever questioned why she called or what she said or anything else, I'd have some evidence that I've done nothing.
But he also gets very angry at Amy for going through his phone to even find these.
Do not do that. Do not physically get in my way when I'm angry. That is not a good thing to do.
And he later admits that he looks at Amy's phone all of the time. Both of these instances, by the way, are in the later seasons where Ricky is supposed to be a good guy and redeemed. So again, Ricky fans, I'm awaiting your explanation for that one. There are also times where characters are broken up but are considering getting back together only to find out that one of them hooked up with their worst enemy or another ex. For example, Henry and Alice are Ben's childhood best friends. And Henry and Alice have been a couple since they were kids. They break up before their senior year because Henry feels like they need time to be single and young before settling down forever, but they very much still have romantic feelings for one another. But then Ben burns down a school, hooks up with Alice for comfort after burning down the school.
Look, anyone who burned down a school would panic and run to his best friend and have sex. It's a perfectly normal scenario.
And then has the nerve to pretend he's mad at Henry so that he doesn't have to tell Henry the shitty thing that he did. Okay, but what about just straightforward, black and white cheating? Two characters are in a committed, monogamous relationship, and one either kisses or hooks up with another character. I decided to write down every instance of confirmed physical cheating in this show, just that I could remember. Now, I am not counting multiple times with the same person. Like, Jack cheated on Grace when Grace caught him kissing Adrian, but he also later admits that he was hooking up with Adrian separate from that. However, if characters break up and then get back together, I do count a second instance of cheating, even if it's with the same person they cheated with in their previous relationship. Using Jack once again as an example, Jack cheats on Grace with Madison while Madison is away at med camp over the summer. Grace breaks up with Jack because a few episodes later, she still feels guilty about that time they hooked up and killed her dad in a tragic plane crash. But then in season 5, Jack and Grace get back together and they get engaged. But secretly, Jack sneaks off to make out with Madison in his car. So those are two separate instances. Let's do a speed round with the rest, shall we? Adrian cheats on Ricky with Ben. Adrian cheats on Omar with Grace. Ricky cheats on Adrian with the girl from 7th Heaven, named Zoe. Turns out Zoe's boyfriend cheated on Zoe with Adrian, so Zoe slept with Ricky so that Adrian would also be cheated on. Ricky and Adrian also break up and get back together and cheat on each other constantly. Too much to count. Ricky cheats on Amy with a girl named Haley in season 3. Ricky in season 5 says that he's never cheated on Amy, but Amy explicitly told him if they were going to date, he couldn't hook up with other girls. And when Amy asked him directly about this, he lied. It counts. Ricky cheats on Grace with Adrian. Jack cheats on Grace with Adrian. Jack cheats on Maya from Pretty Little Liars with Grace. Madison cheats on Jason with Jack. Jason cheats on Madison with Grace. Grace cheats on Jack with Jason. Grace cheats on Daniel with Jack. Grace cheats on Grant with Daniel. Grace cheats on Grant with Jack. Jesse cheats on Lauren with Lauren's best friend Madison, which I'm counting twice because Lauren and Madison are basically a romantic couple to me, also double betrayal. Amy asks the boy from Pretty Little Liars out on a date when she's dating Ben. They don't kiss until after Ben and Amy broke up, but the intent was there, I'm counting it. Kathleen cheats on George with guy who owns a sock store. Kathleen cheats on Dr. Segay with George. It's also implied that Dr. Segay is cheating on Kathleen with an unnamed woman in Zimbabwe. Dr. Bowman cheats on Kathleen and has a secret family in Africa. So when he says he's going to do missionary work, he's actually doing missionary, counting twice. Griffin cheats on Peter with gay guy who I cannot remember and is only there for one episode. Tom cheats on Tammy. Tammy cheats on her husband with Tom. Willadine cheats on Anne with Nora. Willadine was also Nora's AA sponsor, so counting twice for that, rotted. Finally, Mayimbe Alex's husband cheats on her and leaves her for his male cousin. I'm not even confident that I remembered all of them. With the sheer amount of cheating in this show, a lot of these are just totally glossed over by the narrative, which to me kind of gives the impression that cheating is just normal, not even a big deal. Guess when everyone on this show is pro-teen marriage, I can't expect much. How dare you want a teenage divorce, Ben and Adrian, after you were pushed to marry each other when you weren't even dating and then suffered a traumatic stillbirth? Just cheat on your significant other like everyone else. I need to calm down. We still have so much to talk about. One thing I was absolutely not prepared for was when and how this show incorporates licensed popular songs. Music in TV shows or movies are one of those subtle aspects that may feel unimportant in the grand scheme of the set design, the acting, the writing on the show, but music used effectively in a show not only sets the mood of the scene you're watching, good music will also become another element of the story that can express something scripted dialogue can't. I actually had to cut out a 3-page tangent I went on about how much I love some of the song choices in Arcane. God, what an incredible show. But that is just not a fair comparison. But shows and movies like Euphoria, Saltburn, Yellow Jackets, they all used pre-existing licensed music to display the tone, the style, the story they were telling. But I do realize it's probably unfair to compare prestige media from 2024 to network television shows in the early 2000s. So instead, I'd like to compare Secret Life to another show on the ABC network, which, albeit did have a bigger budget, on rare occasions, incorporated licensed music outside of its own score to, I think, incredible effect. I am, of course, talking about Lost, one of my favorite television shows to yap about. While this show certainly had its flaws, I think it set a vital precedent for television shows as an art form with merit, just as much if not more than films or other visual media. Season 1 of Lost ends on a classic cliffhanger. After the characters crash landed, they've begun to notice that this isn't just a normal island. Despite being in a devastating plane crash, survivors are mysteriously healed from what should have been permanent ailments. Characters see ghosts of their past, or can see glimpses into the future. And then, of course, there's the hatch. Out in the middle of the jungle is this mysterious metal hatch with no apparent way to open it from the outside. Could there be food and water stored down there? Could there be communication to the outside world stored down there? Or could this hatch actually be sealed for the survivors' own safety? We have no idea. John Locke, though, is convinced that this hatch will be the saving grace for everyone on the island, and at the end of season 1, he is finally able to open it. So the final shot of season 1 is Jack and John Locke looking down on the viewer from what seems to be a bottomless pit. But the start of season 2 seemingly has nothing to do with that. We see this man who we've never seen before, and he seems to be living in some sort of 70s space pod. To begin his day, this man walks over to his record player, and we hear the song Make Your Own Kind of Music, the 1969 song sung by Cass Elliot. On one level, this song further leads us to believe that we are at some point in the past, but it also tells us a lot about this man's character in a very short amount of time. Verse lyrics like the loneliest kind of lonely further emphasize that this character is alone, and seems to have been for quite some time. We also see him doing a series of menial tasks, working out, making a protein shake, taking a mysterious medication, and typing on this keyboard. You get the sense that this is a routine for him, and this is again reinforced by the chorus of this song. The upbeat tone of the song, juxtaposed with this man alone in what to us looks like some kind of spaceship, also adds to the confusion of what we're seeing. But then there's a crash. The record skips, and we realize that this man is at the bottom of the hatch. It is one of my favorite moments in TV ever. Every part of it feels so intentional, including the music being used. Secret Life, well, Secret Life takes random top 40 songs and just throws them in there because, hey, people like those songs. Maybe people's fondness for Taylor Swift will inadvertently trick our young audience into also liking this show. Secret Life opens with Shailene's just terrified face as she realizes that she is in fact 15 and pregnant. After the theme song, we cut to Ulysses S. Grant High School with Girlfriend by Avril Lavigne playing very loudly. Amy still has the same terrified face she had in the first scene, and we see her slowly walk past Adrian and Ricky. We can tell by the way Amy stares at him as he walks by that Ricky is the father of his baby, but we don't get the sense that she's romantically interested in him. She again just looks terrified. So you're not getting a hey, you, I don't like your girlfriend vibe from this already. Then Ben, Henry, and Alice stare as Grace and Jack walk by hand in hand. Also, for some reason, Grace and Jack are shot in slow motion, but you can tell it wasn't actually filmed on a slow motion camera, so it just leaves you with the sense that your Wi-Fi is bad and your computer is dropping the frame rate in a really strange way. I will give them that Ben and Henry staring Grace down like that, it does seem like they want to be her girlfriend, sure. But then the song abruptly ends so that Amy can, again, still terrified, tell her friends that she had terrible sex with questionable consent.
And it wasn't fun, and definitely not like what you see in the movies, you know, all romantic and stuff.
We have no sense of how Ben, Henry, Alice, Grace, and Jack relate to the storyline at all. And the gravity of Amy's confession really feels undercut by the fact that we were just playing pop punk earlier. This isn't juxtaposition with purpose, it's just odd. It feels like the directors wanted a song to show that they're in high school, people have crushes on each other, but they couldn't figure out how to integrate that with Amy's very serious dilemma, so they just don't bother. And if you think they're going to use this song just once, guess again. This show plays Girlfriend by Avril Lavigne 4 times. They are getting their money's worth out of Miss Avril. The second time we hear the song is at the end of season 1.
Like this one.
We again see Grace and Jack walk in with a choppy frame rate, except no one is pining over Grace like the first time, so the slight justification they had for this song choice isn't even there now. We watch Grace slow-mo take her birth control pills, and that's kind of it. I guess it's meant to show the growth of the characters from the first episode to the finale. That's why they're reusing the song there. But again, it's going to get worse. In season 2, Amy, Grace, and Adrian all want to seduce Ben. Don't ask me why. So, of course, we watch them all slowly walk over to their lockers, then we stop using slow-mo, then we have slow-mo again to show them awkwardly staring at the door, hoping that Ben is coming in, and then the scene just cuts to a completely unrelated conversation between Ashley and Ricky. But they did play Girlfriend by Avril Lavigne, so that was a pretty cool scene in my mind. Then in season 4, half of the group is graduating high school, and this show has the nerve to play a slow, emotional piano cover of Girlfriend. I mean, what more can you say? In season 2, Mayim Bialik is throwing a mother-daughter dance that no one wants to be at, and just out of nowhere, she plays 30 seconds of Taylor Swift's Love Story while she just awkwardly shuffles around.
Dance, dance, dance!
The way that this song would have been perfect for a cheesy romantic moment, which the show has so many of, that's exactly what this song was made for. I just want to know how much they paid for 30 seconds of one of Taylor Swift's best songs, and why they thought this was the best way to use it. Then, in season 4, Adrian is going through a depressive episode, and she's trying to get out of it. So they show her power walking in a juicy tracksuit to Rolling in the Deep by Adele. But just the verse and the pre-chorus. And they couldn't figure out how to smoothly transition this scene, so they just cut the song right off before the chorus and throw in the show's theme song, which, may I say, just blends perfectly. At the end of the episode, after Adrian has punched some holes in the walls, #women in male fields, they again show her angrily bopping her head to the first verse of Rolling in the Deep. And that's the end of the episode. You know, nothing says female rage quite like Adele. But my favorite music integration was Marry You by Bruno Mars. Considering how much child marriage is in this show, I knew this song was just a matter of time. And it did not disappoint. First, we see it after Amy and Ricky run out of the church after what we assume is their elopement. We get a cheesy montage of Ricky driving his Prius, cut between flashbacks of Amy and Ricky's beautiful relationship. Perfectly fine, if not a little bit cliche, musical integration. Then once again, Brenda is like, we paid a lot of money for this song. We're not just gonna use it once. Have you ever heard of the hit TV show Glee? Well, Brenda has, and she's coming for their gig. To celebrate Amy and Ricky's elopement, a random extra begins passing out Ricky's face on popsicle sticks, or as he calls it, Ricks on sticks.
Ricky on a stick, Rick on a stick, Ricky on a stick, Rick on a stick.
And it turns out that this is part of a special flash mob performance of Marry You by Lauren and Madison. Hey baby, I think I wanna marry you. One thing I am really grateful for is that we as a society have finally moved past flash mobs. Don't get me wrong, the gesture is sweet, but this is in fact my worst nightmare. Anyways, Lauren and Madison sing this entire song all the way through while Amy awkwardly stares on, and that is the effect Glee had on pop culture. I know I may at times seem like a bitter witch woman, but there are in fact things I liked about this show. Yes, it's more fun to be like, thing bad. This secret life situation is crazy for 3 hours, but I would not have watched 121 episodes without liking some aspects of the show. And allow me to highlight some. I said this earlier, but I really do appreciate that Shailene Woodley, when they started the show, was actually 15 years old, playing a teenage mother. Amy can be a hard character to like at times, but I personally can't really hold that against her because her character is 15. She acts like she's 15. She looks like she's 15.
It's not possible for me to be a mother. A real mother at 15.
I understand it probably would have been much easier to go with an older actor like pretty much the rest of the high school cast, but Amy's story is way more impactful because she really does look like a kid. The same actually goes for India Isley, who in real life was a year younger than Shailene. I believe that this character was in fact a 13-year-old girl, and that is not common for a lot of YA shows of this genre. I liked both of Ricky's moms. Before Nora came back into Ricky's life, Ricky spent his life in the foster care system and seemingly spent most of his time with Margaret and Shaker, a social worker and a surgeon. Rose from Lost, you remember? Honestly, I struggled to remember what her character's name was because she just is Rose from Lost to me. But Margaret is one of the most involved, kind, and reasonable parents on this show. She encourages Ricky to work through her trauma. She is non-judgmental when she talks to Adrian, when Adrian is contemplating abortion, unlike Adrian's dad, of course. They also go on to adopt Ricky and take Nora in after she comes out of prison so that Ricky can really have this relationship with his birth mom in a safe environment. Margaret is not really given a ton of screen time. Of course, in the first season, that made sense because she was presumably busy filming the hit TV show Lost, but throughout the rest of the show, she really just exists to give advice to the high schoolers, be the one reasonable parent on the show. Given how much Brenda loved playing into the parent drama on this show, this does perhaps raise some alarms about tropes available for Black women to play. But I did, at least at a minimum, appreciate that the show depicted a positive foster family relationship when they very easily could have been made a stereotype like everything else in the show. Tom. Tom is Grace's adult adopted brother, and he has Down syndrome. I'll be honest, Down syndrome representation is not my area of expertise. I tried to see if anyone with Down syndrome had spoken about Tom's character, and I couldn't really find anything like that. Did find positive reviews from people who claim to work closely with people from Down syndrome, although I acknowledge that that's not the same thing. So this is just my perspective here. I was a big fan of Tom watching the show. I thought his scenes were entertaining. Luke Zimmerman did a great job playing him. He had great comedic timing.
Those kinds of books, honey, are very disrespectful to women.
Believe me, I am getting a new respect for women.
And it's also clear that the writers initially only planned for Tom to be like a Greek chorus kind of character, but they ended up fleshing his character out more because they just enjoyed the character and the actor. Although Tom's disability is acknowledged throughout the show, Tom never has a disability-centric plotline. Tom gets a job. Tom has relationships. He has friendships with other characters, but he also has romantic relationships. Tammy is Tom's on-again, off-again girlfriend on the show, and Tammy has cerebral palsy. She is also a Black woman, and for as little white disability representation we see on screen, even today, there is even less for people of color. Tammy and Tom decide they want to get married on their first date after they see Ben and Amy's wedding in season 1. Tom's family is against this, but not because Tom is disabled, but because Tammy and Tom literally just had one date, and that would be a very irrational decision for anybody to make. And just like every other couple on the show, Tammy and Tom have their ups and downs. They are just as messy as everyone else. And that ultimately really is what I appreciated about Tom's character. Everyone on this show is a menace, is a villain. And Tom is no exception. He slut-shames his sister. He steals a car. He absolutely slams a football right at Jack.
Think fast.
Groin injury! Get the ice.
I don't think so.
But he also has kinder moments. When his adoptive father dies, he wants to be there for her just like when she took care of him when his birth parents died. He wants to take care of her in her grief. When he meets Jordan Fisher, he accepts him as his brother, no questions asked. Again, I do not think I have the knowledge to say this is perfect representation. I think that Tom was a three-dimensional character who had a full life outside of his disability. Jennifer Coolidge. Speaking of Tom, in season 1, Tom hires what everyone lovingly calls an internet hooker to hang out with him. And it just so happens that the internet hooker is American icon, my personal hero, Jennifer Coolidge, or as she's known on this show, Betty.
If you don't pay me the money, a very mean guy is gonna come and beat you up with a bag of oranges that he keeps in his trunk.
Jennifer Coolidge is like Jeff Goldblum in the sense that I am convinced that neither of them are really given a script. They just show up and give insane, wonderful performances.
There's that nice boy you work with, Ricky. Ricky!
Clearly the writers love Jennifer Coolidge as much as I did, because in season 2, they reintroduce her as Leo's new girlfriend. There is, of course, this whole tired plot line where everyone is like, oh, Ben, your dad is dating a slut. Oh no, what does this mean for the Sausage King?
I like Betty.
Whatever.
Whatever? What does that mean?
It means you can like her all you want, but she looks like a hooker.
But it turns out that Leo knew from the start what Betty did for work, and he saw her for the amazing woman that she is. Leo helps Betty track down her abusive ex-husband who supposedly pushed her into sex work.
They found your husband at the bottom of the East River.
Is he dead?
She's kind. She doesn't try to parent Ben, but she's a good mentor to him, even when he is rude as hell to her for no reason.
Do you want to talk to me about it?
Do I want to talk about a mistake I made with sex to a hooker?
She even gives Ben her $50,000 sapphire ring, only for everyone to say, oh yeah, what'd she do to get that ring? At the end of the day, she's Jennifer Coolidge. She's the funniest person on the show.
You used to be such a hot tomato. Is it hot tamale? I don't think it could be tamale because tamales are thin.
And just like any good thing on the show, the showrunners have to ruin it for me. In season 4, we're introduced to Leo's hot secretary, Camille, who was very clearly in love with Leo, even though she won't say it. Leo, for no real reason, says, yeah, I want to divorce Betty, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to be emotionally distant until Betty divorces me. You know, like an adult. There's this one heartbreaking scene where Leo is like, hey, Betty, do you ever regret being married to me? And she's like, no, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You changed my life. You showed me kindness. I love your terrible son. I love being married to you.
I can't imagine something better. I mean, this is like a fairy tale come true.
That's nice.
Leo's like, great. I think I'm gonna go make out with my secretary behind your back, Betty. And genuinely, this show has the nerve to play romantic music while this is happening. Like we're supposed to be rooting for this over Jennifer Coolidge. I hate you, Camille. I hate you, Sausage King. How dare you do this to Jennifer Coolidge? But eventually Betty is like, listen, Leo, I know you haven't told me about your affair, but I can tell you're in love with your secretary, and you know what? That's totally okay with me. If you could just help me pay to go back to college, I would really appreciate that, Leo. You might be a multi-millionaire who cheated on me, but that's all I want. Then Betty hires a divorce attorney who, without Betty's knowledge or permission, demands that Leo give Betty $3 million for him having an affair. Personally, I'm like, yeah, Betty, make his pockets hurt. I don't feel bad for the Sausage King. Leo is like, all right, fine. I will write a check for $3 million. But I know that Betty will not cash it because she's a good person. And if she does cash that check, then I guess she was nothing more than a prostitute after all.
If she cashes your check, she cashes your check. And I'm not the judge of character that I thought I was, and she's nothing but a prostitute after all.
The disrespect is crazy. Betty doesn't cash the check and shows up to Leo's house to say, oh, Leo, you're so nice for offering $3 million, but I don't want that. This measly Letterman jacket you bought me to go to college is more than enough.
You are like God and Santa Claus and Bill Gates, all just like rolled into one. You know that?
And Camille has the nerve to walk in at this point and go, oh, Betty's here? I can't believe you were ever married to that woman. I didn't have children for 25 years, Leo, because I was waiting for you to get over your dead wife and leave Betty for me.
What the hell did I do?
It's not what you did tonight. It's just what you did. I mean, how did you ever marry that woman?
The only thing I like about Camille is that one time she punched Ben.
She probably can't even get pregnant. If she could, she would have trapped you by now.
Everything else she does, jail. You would think that once they divorced, we just wouldn't see Betty anymore. But no, she appears in like 6 more episodes after that, just to hang out with everyone.
Think about it, Nora. Think about going back to school. Obama wants you to.
Listen, I get that Jennifer Coolidge probably realized her worth and wanted to leave the show, but Betty was a comic relief character at most. They easily could have just had her continue to exist off screen while Leo continued to be Ben's parent on screen. Like, Ricky's foster dad is a surgeon, and they're constantly like, oh yeah, he's fine, he's just real busy with surgery, so he's not here. Dr. Segay goes to Africa and only exists off screen for like 2 whole seasons. They simply just did not have to do all that to Betty. I promise this whole list of things I like doesn't always end with me ranting, but sometimes it just ends up that way. Joe Hampton.
Hey, Joe. Aren't you kind of an expert on Leonardo da Vinci? I'm an expert on a lot of things.
Joe Hampton is described on the Secret Life fandom wiki as student/hustler, known for his large amount of illegal business he commits on campus, causing issues for all the students of high school, making illegal deals and trades with those a part of the campus. That is somewhat friends with Ricky, Ben, Amy, and Jack. He offering them fake IDs for Amy and Ben's marriage, helping promote Grace's Just Say Me campaign, getting everyone caught for going to the beach when they had ditched school. There you have it. You might guess based on his last name being Hampton that he's like Brenda Hampton's son in a cameo role, but you would be so wrong. He's actually John Snyder, Dr. Bowman's son, in a cameo role. The more you know. He appears as an expert witness in Amy and Ricky's custody dispute.
I mean, look at her. She's a mother, and she looks like that. You know, I mean, come on.
He confronts Maya Bialik, the new guidance counselor, about how she got fired from her old school because she went to prom with a student.
You were fired from your last job for having sex with a student, you received your PhD for the internet, and your husband left you. For another guy.
But Maya Bialik will have you know that that was totally non-romantic and solely an unappreciated political statement. There's also this one episode where I guess Joe Hampton was sick, so there's just some other guy who runs a business doing people's homework and breaking into teachers' files named Sam. He's never seen again. Frankly, it is insulting that the writers thought we would accept anything less than the King Joe Hampton.
And we'll also throw in the Just Say Me refrigerator magnet, the Just Say Me bumper sticker, and the Just Say Me diary.
Sadly, Joe Hampton's last appearance on the show is in season 4, and even sadder, it's just Joe telling Ben that Ben is a nice guy.
So I think that the only way your reputation of good guy can survive this is if you stick around.
Where? When? How? Olympic gymnast Shawn Johnson cameo. To my absolute delight, Shawn Johnson makes not 1, but 2 cameos and canonically exists as a student at their high school.
Hey, Shawn.
Hey,
Hey, haven't seen you around. Where have you been?
where have I been?
Yeah.
In the first cameo, Ricky is like, Shawn Johnson, where you been, babe? And she's like, oh, I've been busy getting 4 Olympic medals.
So maybe we can go out sometime?
I don't know. I'm kind of busy.
Doing what? Come on.
All right.
And Ricky is so thrilled that Shawn Johnson talked to him that he does the worst cartwheel I've ever seen. Shawn's second cameo is in the infamous Just Say Me episode. This is the episode where Grace says that instead of being intimate with men, all the girls should just self-pleasure, or as she calls it, just say me. In comes Shawn Johnson with a giant just say me button, and Jack goes, Shawn, you know what that means, right? And Shawn says, of course I do. I think every woman should focus on themselves, just like me, Olympic gymnast Shawn Johnson.
I think every woman should focus on herself. You know, that's how I got to where I am today.
Just say me means not putting anyone's dreams ahead of your own, saying no to drugs and alcohol, and respecting yourself. And Jack is like, all right, good evening, even though it is clearly the middle of a school day.
Not giving into drugs or alcohol, respecting yourself.
Alrighty, well, have a good evening.
Shawn Johnson looked camp right in the eye with these cameos. And finally, my favorite moment in the entire show, when Amy is in New York City trying to find her way to music camp, she gets lost and asks local New Yorkers to help while carrying her giant French horn. The way they depict this is through a very long photo slideshow set to Kids by MGMT. And by the way, this scene is totally divorced from the previous scene. Amy says that she's lost in New York at the very beginning of the episode. Then the next time we see her is 35 minutes into a 40-minute episode. And if you're watching without ads, this is what the scene transition looks like. It's perfect. I honestly think this photo shoot may have been Brenda's way of punishing Shailene for leaving part of season 3 to do an objectively better project. Oh. Anyways, what this whole video, this far too long video, has been working up to really is the finale of Secret Life of the American Teenager. I don't know if you know this, but the final season of Secret Life, unlike the previous 100 episodes of Secret Life, was kind of strange. And I ended up having a lot of thoughts on it, would you believe? It is probably one of my favorite seasons of the show just because they really gave up on it being serious in any sort of way.
We're with Kathy. She's 15. I think her parents are here already somewhere.
Secret Life is mostly just people standing and talking in one high school hallway and, 3 house sets. It probably didn't cost that much to keep this show running. That being said, ABC was definitely trying to wrap the show up at a certain point. The season 3 finale aired on June 6th of 2011. Season 4 premiered on June 13th of 2011, literally 1 week later. The 5th season premiered on June 11th, 2012, and in October, it was announced that this would be, tragically, the final season of Secret Life. It seems like the second half of the 4th season and the first half of the 5th season were filmed at about the same time, and before they returned to finish the second half, ABC told them they had to wrap this up in 12 episodes. The only problem with that was, I think Brenda definitely thought that she was going to get 6 seasons and a movie because she introduced a lot of characters at the end of season 4 and season 5 who I think were sort of meant to replace the main cast as the main cast graduated from high school. So now she had to deal with all of these new characters that she had introduced and resolve their storylines on top of dealing with the main characters, the ones fans were actually invested in. For instance, in season 4, we got Ethan, who was basically just a smaller version of Ricky if Ricky had the iconic Justin Bieber bangs. Ethan grew up with Ricky in foster care, and no, he was never mentioned before, but he's back now because he sent nude pictures of his ex-girlfriend, who was also a minor, as revenge for her breaking up with him. I think there's a word for that. And no, this plotline is not really given any sense of gravity or importance. Everyone's just like, come on, this guy, he's just a cute little kid. He just needs help. Come on, look at this guy. But it turns out that he's not just a mini Ricky. He's also a mini Ben. The worst possible combination. He becomes obsessed with the new pregnant girl in town and tries to ruin every chance she has at adopting out her child because he wants to be a father to this kid who is not his, and he just met this girl 2 months ago.
So, why can't you guys have kids? And why can't you have manners?
He's a troubled youth.
Poor Kathy. Kathy is like, I'm a little worried you're only interested in me because I'm pregnant. And Ethan is like, what? No way. Remember the first time I walked up to you? It was because I thought you had a nice butt. That had nothing to do with your pregnancy.
Remember, I was attracted to you from the back. I didn't even see that you were pregnant.
But then once Kathy has the baby and does give the baby to a nice couple, Ethan breaks up with her because he wants to hook up with another girl. There is no good male representation on this show, unfortunately, but he is not the only menace. Ben also meets a girl named Dylan, and she's a bad girl. She smokes her friend's mom's medical marijuana, not even smoking out the window, doesn't bother to take it outside, nothing. So surprise, surprise, they get caught. But don't worry, she is not a pothead no matter what people say. She can't even get any more medical marijuana because her friend's mom died of cancer, and they don't write prescriptions for dead people.
Are you still smoking pot?
No. Where would I get pot? Mercedes' mother is dead.
So anyways, Dylan is super, super rich, even richer than Ben, and wants Ben to transfer to her insanely expensive private school.
Dad, please, just let me transfer. Look, I know it's a lot of money. It's, $32,000.
Dylan and Ben then break into the science lab of her school, and she takes out her mini blowtorch she presumably has on her at all times to light this Bunsen burner. Dylan wants to roast marshmallows with this Bunsen burner, because she's bad. Once Ben and Dylan leave the school, there is an explosion in the science lab, which burns down the entire school.
I guess no one's going to be going to that school next year. Apparently, it caught fire tonight. Looks like the whole place burned down. Started in one of the science labs. Some sort of explosion.
Even though Dylan tries to stop him, Ben confesses to breaking into the lab and starting a fire, and not even his lawyer Haley Duff can save him at this point.
I don't remember who lit the Bunsen burner.
done here. That kid's an idiot.
But it turns out there was a gas leak in the science lab, totally unrelated to their Bunsen burner trysts, and they are just completely off the hook. It was quite the disappointment for me. As for the main characters, they really ran out of ideas for Adrienne at this point. Adrienne started dating this guy named Omar, who pressured her to move in and marry him after less than 5 months of dating, even though she is freshly 18 and is still traumatized from losing her child and the divorce. But reminder, this show loves marriage, so once Omar finally breaks Adrienne down, she's like, you know what? Yes, I totally want to marry you and live with you. And Omar says, well, too bad. Give me back the ring. I'm moving to New York to invent PragerU for kids. See you later. Except then he comes back and is like, actually, you know what, Adrienne? Why don't you drop your entire life in California and marry me again? I changed my mind. And Adrienne is like, oh my gosh, yes. Listen, Adrienne may have been messy, but she deserved better than that. Jack and Grace spend this entire season basically taking turns begging the other to marry them, and the other one going, no way, I can't commit marriage on this show, are you crazy? They do get engaged eventually, off screen of course, as all important things do on the show, but then Jack saves a sex worker who just walks into his dorm and says, hey, give me money.
Busy.
I'm not leaving. I need $50.
It turns out Ginger is actually a 16-year-old girl named Chloe, and she ends up getting adopted by the Sausage King. How sweet. Except the pimp also walks into Jack's dorm and beats Jack to near death.
Yep. Start praying, Christian.
Seriously, what is the security in these dorm rooms?
Shall we pray?
But don't worry, even though they really make it sound like he died, he's fine. He's just in a coma. Except now, Grace doesn't want to be engaged. Why? Who knows?
But she said yes. She's wearing an engagement ring.
Doesn't mean she has to marry him if she doesn't want to marry him.
Thank you. Jack does wake up via Christmas miracle and then cheats on Grace with Madison, but honestly, who cares? They break off their engagement. Grace does this.
Bye, Jack.
Bye, Grace.
This just leaves Ricky and Amy, and unfortunately more of Ben. So back in season 4, Amy begged Ricky to get married, and other characters would constantly remind Ricky that living with Amy when she's 18 isn't enough of a commitment. She needs marriage.
I want to be married. I want to know that Ricky's going to be there for me and for John for the rest of our lives.
Yes, they have a child together, but they've also only been dating for a year. They're both incredibly young, and I would argue it's probably more stable for their kid if they take things slow. But no, they need to be a good Christian family. They need to be legally bound. So Ricky proposes to Amy at his high school graduation, which prompts all the graduates to turn their tassel.
Will you marry me?
That's the ceremony, I guess. But now, after being so hesitant about marriage, Ricky's like, set a date, Amy. Come on, Amy, set a date. I can't stand not being married to you now, Amy. If you love me, you'd set a date.
So thanks for interrupting us, because now that Amy's hands are free, I'll get a calendar and we can settle on something, even if it's just a time of year, a season, anything.
And Amy's like, I don't know, maybe we should just be engaged and wait until I finish college? Not good enough, Amy. Amy says, okay, how about June of next year?
I was thinking maybe June.
All right.
Lovely. Amy set a date. Except Ricky immediately forgets that because the very next episode, he's like, Amy, set a date. Amy, set a date.
You are such a jerk.
Pick a date.
And I feel like I'm losing my mind because I'm like, didn't she just do that last episode? But Amy's like, fine. We're going to get married on the 4th of July. Yeah, happy? We're getting married and celebrating freedom at the exact same time.
July the 4th of next summer. How's that?
That's great. God bless America.
What does that mean?
Is that enough for Ricky? No, of course not. He's like, sounds like you're not serious about getting married because that's a stupid day to get married. And I just need to emphasize this whole time, Ricky is being scary.
Come on, he's 3. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does. Or do I have no say in that because he has your last name and not my last name? We can talk about what's going to happen next year when we're not married.
Ricky, we're getting married. Plans are right there on the table.
Doesn't mean that you'll go through with the plans.
Why is he acting so aggressive when Amy has only ever told him that she wants to get married and wants to get married soon?
There's definitely going to be a wedding on the 4th of July.
So you keep saying.
Why would you think I'm going to back out of the wedding now?
Because you bought that dress.
But it turns out his totally irrational behavior up until this point is justified because a few episodes later, Amy's like, yeah, I guess I really don't want to get married, and I'm just telling Ricky I want to get married. I said I'll go through with it, so I might as well go through with it.
I was dying to get married, and then I just thought it was the right thing to do. And now I'm just going to do it because I said I would.
And even though Ricky is also yelling at Amy any chance he gets about her not wanting to be married, Ricky also states multiple times that he doesn't really want to get married, but he feels like they should. So
I'm tired of arguing with Amy. I'm tired of Amy. I don't want to get married.
it's exhausting to watch. Then Amy gets into Hudson University, which is a college in New York City. Amy hears this news from her guidance counselor and is immediately terrified that Ricky will find out about this school that she forgot she even applied to before she gets the chance to tell him.
So I want to get home in case the acceptance letter came in today so that I can tear it up because I don't want Ricky to think that I don't want to get married.
Don't worry, Amy. Ricky already ripped open your mail and read it. He's already very angry about it.
Maybe you could just leave me a message and let me know why you're getting a letter from Hudson University in New York.
And he gets even more angry when he finds out that Ben also got into that school.
I got an early acceptance into Hudson University in New York.
So then he continues to read Amy's mail.
Got any plans to travel anytime soon?
You opened that invitation to tour the school in New York, didn't you?
Yeah, and I intend to open everything that comes from that school.
Meanwhile, Ben is hacking into Amy's e-diary to find out if Amy is still secretly in love with him.
Hey, Ben, I want to talk to you! You read my diary. Ben, how did you read my diary?
I hacked your computer, didn't Alice tell you?
Right. So after Ben did that little bit of arson that wasn't arson, Ben decided that he was still in love with Amy. He tells Amy that he knows they can't be together, and for his sake, he doesn't think they should be friends or even talk to each other.
I apologize for this notion I've had that you should have belonged to me. You belong to Ricky. Let's not be friends, not for a while.
Except this is Secret Life, so he immediately goes back on that the next episode and just starts acting insane.
What's he staring at?
It wasn't my first choice, but yeah, that makes me very happy.
What was your first choice?
Whatever school Amy Juergens Underwood gets into.
I want to get married.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you really?
He'll just walk up to Amy and go, "Hey, Amy, I know you don't want to marry Ricky. You're going to college in New York with me. I already got us an apartment we can share together, Amy. I changed flights so I could sit next to you on the plane to tour the college, Amy. I stole your engagement ring while you were asleep so that Ricky would yell at you, Amy." It's concerning. So after like 10 exhausting episodes of this plot just repeating over and over again, Amy finally says, "You know what, Ricky? You're right. I don't want to get married. I am going to this expensive school in New York that I cannot afford. And, I'm just going to leave John with you so I can study to be a high school teacher." Everyone knows the only college that teaches higher education is in New York City. So the show ends with Ricky raising John alone. No one liked the ending of Secret Life. It was insulting that they made us watch 121 episodes of these characters only for everyone to end up far worse people than when they started, with the possible exception of Ricky. And to make matters worse, the actual finale episode is mostly just flashbacks to the rest of the show. So we didn't even see the beginning of that conversation when Amy called off the marriage with Ricky. Everyone knows the most impactful moments happen off screen. That's the Brenda special. Brenda Hampton does not give a lot of interviews, so this is just me speculating here, but I think Amy running off to New York and leaving Ricky and John was the intended ending from the inception of the show. At the start of the series, Amy and Ricky meet at band camp, and Amy is very passionate about playing her French horn.
I don't know anything about anything other than the French horn.
When characters introduce Amy, they always mention that she plays the French horn.
Her name is Amy. She plays French horn. She's in the band. She's smart. She's nice.
I've been rejected by the French horn player.
Amy has been playing the French horn since the 3rd grade, which, at least from what I know, is a pretty young age to start. That is her only real personality trait outside of her relationships and her being a parent. In fact, when Amy is asked about her plans for college, she says that she wants to go to Juilliard for the French horn and then perform in symphony orchestras. When Ashley is begging Amy not to put her baby up for adoption, Ashley says, "I know you'd miss out on band, but you can teach the baby music."
I know you want to be in the band, but it's not the band that's important to you. It's music. You love music, and you can still play your French horn when the baby comes.
Throughout the first season, Amy's connection to music and her passion for the French horn is a significant part of her character. In fact, her first scene on the show is her walking back from band practice in her little marching band uniform. But then when filming season 3, Shailene Woodley was cast in The Descendants. Not that Descendants, the other Descendants. And this was important for a few reasons. First, it seems like Shailene actually got significant acting training while filming this, because from this point on, her performance on the show is way more than just the lip biting she served all of season 1 and season 2. There was genuine Oscar buzz for Shailene's role in this movie. Because Shailene was filming this big movie in Hawaii, the show needed to come up with the storyline to explain why Amy wasn't with the rest of the characters. She is still the main character of the show, so they can't write her out entirely, but if Amy's character was out of town, they could do phone call scenes with her, which, even though these phone calls can span multiple episodes, they were probably only filmed on 1 or 2 days on Shailene's end so that she could leave and do her other projects. And where else to send Amy but New York City?
Ba ba da da ba. Ba da ba ba da.
Amy's guidance counselor sent an application to a competitive summer music program in New York City. At first, Amy is like, why would you do this to me? I literally have a 3-month son. I can't go. But then everyone in first-person camera view says, get out of here, Amy. You go, girl. We'll watch John for you.
What, are you afraid to go to New York and compete? Huh? Afraid you don't have what it takes? Afraid of failing? I would be, but you should go.
But when Amy gets there, everyone's favorite Republican teen mom of the mid-2000s, Bristol Palin, walks in and goes, oh, you thought you were actually in this program because you're good at music? No, this is actually a program for teenage mothers.
Who is it? It's your buddy, Bristol. Do you have a son or a daughter?
I have a son.
Me too.
And you have a son?
We're all teen moms and musicians.
Where we send teenage mothers to New York City without their children. Duh. Amy, you're terrible at the French horn. You're delusional. You thought you were good? You thought all your dreams were coming true? Hasn't anyone told you?
So I didn't get here on my own.
Of course you did. You're the world's greatest French horn player, and I'm Yo-Yo Ma.
And Amy is like, you know what? Now that you mention it, I do kind of suck at the French horn. I'm going to quit it forever, I guess. So from that point on, Amy never mentions the French horn again. Now, if anyone asks what she wants to do after high school, she says that she wants to work in high school education and mentor other teenage girls, which is a noble goal, but there is simply no reason for Amy to go to an expensive school in New York City for college on the opposite end of the country from her child and her child's father. Like, she could learn about higher education anywhere. Even if she breaks up with Ricky, it's much easier for her and Ricky to co-parent when they're in the same state, or how about the same coast? This is why I think Amy was meant to keep playing the French horn. Even if they use this teen mother camp, they could have used that as motivation for Amy. A bunch of people are now telling her that she's not good enough at the French horns, so that inspires her and motivates her to work even harder, prove people wrong, instead of just going, meh, you're right, I will give up on my dreams. If Amy had gotten into Juilliard, then her desire to move to New York City, when it just logistically isn't practical, would make a lot more sense. Yes, there are other prestigious music programs, but this was established in season 1 that this was her lifelong dream. There's probably more work for French horn players in New York City, with the different orchestras, Broadway shows. Would it still be kind of wild that she wanted to co-parent while going to college on the other side of the country? Like, yes, but at least we would have even one singular reason why she would want to make that choice. As the show is written, Amy gives 2 reasons for why she wants to go to this school in New York City. 1, she wants her and Ricky to break up, and she'd rather have the logistics break them up than break up with him herself. And 2, she wants to live a college life as if she'd never met Ricky and never had John.
I'm just tired of being a mother. And everything that comes along with it, including marriage. I just feel like being selfish.
So John's going to be spending a lot of time with Ernie Hudson, the town therapist, when he grows up. Amy, from the start of the show, could be selfish, could be impulsive, but I thought her arc in this series was her overcoming those selfish moments. Initially, she doesn't want Ricky to share custody with her because she's afraid that John will love Ricky more than her. But then she changes her mind, admits that she was wrong, lets Ricky have John on the weekends. When she first hears that Ricky wants to go to college, she gets upset because she's afraid he'll move far away. You know, like she's gonna do in 2 seasons. Again, she admits that she's wrong and encourages Ricky to go to school. Up until this point, it felt like Amy's selfish moments were always, on some level, either depicted as wrong, if not outright punished by the narrative. And she loved John. She was actively involved in her son's life. She loved Ricky, and she repeatedly said that it's not just because he's the father of her son. But then she just abandons both of them after insisting for an entire season that she wasn't going to do that. Was every other moment where she learned not to be selfish just a way for the show to fill time until the finale? Just why? Why were these choices made? So as I said, no one was happy with this finale. But what is canon, really? If Dumbledore could be secretly gay throughout the whole Harry Potter franchise, why couldn't Brenda just make up a new ending? And boy did she in 2015. After Megan Park got married to former One Tree Hill star Tyler Hilton, MTV reached out to Brenda Hampton to find out for sure if that really was the ending we were sticking with. And after 2 years, Brenda had cooked up some ideas. New York, ever heard of it? Apparently, Ben did somehow manage to convince Amy to get back together with him after stalking her for all of season 5. Brenda said Amy wondered what might have been if Amy hadn't had a kid with Ricky. And yeah, I think they did have sex to find that out, and it wasn't any good. So they did it again, and it still wasn't any good. A third time? Nothing. And it just became ridiculous. They loved the idea of being in love with the first person they loved in high school, but they just didn't connect physically. If they had stayed together in high school, she probably would have realized this much sooner, and he would have too. So if you're telling me if they had just hooked up in season 1, like they were going to at one point, we might have been spared all of this? After that terrible night that they shared, Ben decided that he was going to write a best-selling novel. I do think that this was sweet. This is probably a reference to Ben's actor Ken Bauman, who left acting and is now a novelist and actually very involved in the Magic the Gathering community. We love that for him. And turns out Amy wasn't a complete deadbeat parent, and she did come back to visit John as often as she could before Ricky and John just also moved to New York with her dad, George? Not George and his wife, Kathleen, just George. So George, Ricky, and John are all roommates in New York, and Leo helps Ricky transfer to a fancy New York college before Leo also moves to New York to start a high-end fast food chain with Ricky. I just know it's one of those millennial burger places where you have to say, can I please have one Bay on Fleek burger with a side of awesome sauce? Then Amy and Ricky just get married. And with George right across the hall, so convenient. Oh, and also Nora moved in with George. Not Kathleen, his wife at the end of season 5. Just Nora. Anne is happily married herself and traveling the world singing in jazz clubs, which I think Brenda means Anne is also happily married, like, as well. But the way it's written, it reads like Anne is married to herself. Hey, if I was Molly Ringwald, I'd do the same thing. Grace is now in medical school in NYU, and it doesn't actually say whether she's in a relationship or not. So, in my head, lesbian Grace is still possible in this universe. Jack married Madison, and they also moved to New York. Leo set Jack up with a job coaching football. I don't think Leo and Jack interacted even once on the show, but hell yeah. Madison is on Broadway. Oh, and guess who else came to New York? Kathleen! Grace's mom, Kathleen. Kathleen is a fundraiser for a church on the Upper East Side, and Grace's brother Tom is a doorman in their building. Brenda does not clarify whether Kathleen and George are together. I mean, I guess they're not because he's living with Nora. And finally, Adrian and Omar are happily married in New York. Adrian finished law school, and they have 2 kids together. So what happened to Ashley? Brenda didn't mention her at all. And honestly, as an Ashley myself, deserved. Then the MTV article states that Brenda asked herself a question that she also answered for herself. Could we ever bring the show back and do these stories? Took the words right out of my mouth, Brenda. Our Amy has become so successful, we would not likely find her on the set of Secret Life. I love how Brenda kind of implies that the rest of the cast would be desperate enough to come back, but Anyways, would they kill off the character of Amy and have Ricky become a widower? Would they have Amy be the bad mother who just took off? Would they replace the actress and just continue on? What would fans do? Hey, if you guys want this show back, I'll kill Amy. I'll do whatever you want. You want Amy gone? She's gone. This epilogue being totally nonsensical and walking back basically the entire finale is so on theme for this show. In a way, this is actually the perfect ending. Like, I do believe if they had another season, this is what would have happened. But this is not the only ending. In 2020, some of the Secret Life actors organized a mini reunion to encourage fans to vote in that year's US election. And for the most part, everyone had just completely blacked out how the show actually ended. They just knew that a lot of people hated it.
Okay, it's been a second since I've seen the show, but I know a lot of people were like, had mixed opinions about how it ended and how certain characters, I just know that, but I think I became a doctor.
But that was not going to stop them from putting forward their own theories about how each of their characters ended up. And it turns out they're all gay and in love now.
Did you end up with Ricky or Ben?
I honestly think that Amy doesn't, well, I don't think she identifies now as anything, and I also think that she's just fluid in her sexuality, so I don't know that she's with Ricky or Ben. She might be with Grace.
Hey, I called her first.
And I see myself as also single and maybe living my true fluid self as well.
I'm pretty sure that Anne became a lesbian.
Yeah, I think she did too.
I don't know. Maybe she still is. Maybe she's fluid.
I think Madison and Lauren gave up on competing for boys and decided to become life partners. And I think they are a power couple.
As long as you ignore the part where Amy and Grace are stepsisters, I think this is a pretty perfect ending. Also, since the show has ended, I think a lot of the actors, particularly Shailene, Megan, and Francia, have some regrets about being involved with the show. In 2020, Shailene wrote, "There were a lot of things that were written into the scripts that were just not me, that a lot of the cast disagreed with. There were belief systems that were pushed that were different from my own, yet legally I was stuck there. To this day, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. So being on Secret Life propelled me to be more vocal about my own belief system." Megan Park, after making her directorial debut with The Fallout, said, "I do remember, not specifically on Secret Life, but lots of projects that I was involved with, I would often feel like it wasn't the most natural way young people would talk or communicate. It's hard to get that right." Shailene and I were talking about this recently about The Fallout, and she was like, "I feel like both of us have this mission to really do content that's super authentic for young people, because both of us were young actors and so much of the time felt like it wasn't authentic. As a director now, I'm trying to make that my mission as well." If y'all haven't watched The Fallout or Megan's more recent movie, My Old Ass, I recommend them both. Megan Park does brilliant work. The Fallout is a very heavy movie, but it is such a powerful depiction of teens experiencing grief, and it's a movie I honestly still think about from time to time, even though I saw it years ago. I know none of these actors will ever fully give the whole tea, their unfiltered opinions on Secret Life. Ultimately, it was a big stepping stone for a lot of their careers, and I'm sure they are grateful for that. But what I would give to just have Francia, Megan's, or Shailene's completely unfiltered takes on this show. I'm not really one for recap podcasts starring the former actors, but that is one I would absolutely be down for. In one of the other very rare Brenda Hampton interviews, the interviewer asked how Brenda Hampton stays so in touch with teen culture given that her show is so teen-centric. And Brenda said, "It's because I am still a teen. I still think like my teenage self in the 1960s. I know I've harped on Brenda quite a lot throughout this video, but I do see, however misguided her attempts may have been at times, that Brenda was trying to make content that teens would genuinely enjoy, connect to, and learn lessons from. And Brenda Hampton in 2008 was correct. That family programming, content that both children and their parents could enjoy and find meaning from, had been steadily on the decline. This show is goofy, it is at times infuriating, but it's also such a product of its time, from the outfits to the references to Obama thrown throughout it, that I still feel this huge sense of nostalgia watching it, even though I gave up on watching it 2 seasons in as a kid. Watching the show all throughout November and December was honestly a much needed distraction for me, not just because of the state of the world during that time, but also just the state of me during all of 2024. 2024 was such a crazy year for me. I got engaged this year. I was very fortunate to have so many of you find and enjoy my content this year, and I don't say enough how grateful I am for that. And, you know, turning 26 and now being on not great health insurance while dealing with MRIs, CT scans, specialist appointments. This year has just been so fast-paced and so all over the place. It was kind of nice just to be able to watch 5 seasons of a very slow-moving, self-contained show that it turns out I had a lot of thoughts and feelings on that I needed to share with y'all. So those are all of my thoughts on The Secret Life of the American Teenager. If you wanted to see more from me, I upload bonus videos over on my Patreon for the people who support me on there. But if you don't want to do that, if you liked this video, you could like, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.
If you're thinking about watching Secret Life, there's a lot to think about. So get informed, talk to your parents or someone you trust, and have a plan. Sometimes it might seem like everyone is doing it, but that's not true. Most aren't. You're in charge of your own life, so stay young, stay focused on your future, and don't let anyone pressure you. Brain rot is 100% preventable. For more information, go to Ashley's Patreon.